Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the next episode of the Pathfinders podcast. I'm Tree0311 here with my partner in crime.
The guy who forgets to hit the record button when he just said to hit the record button.
Of course.
I got it like 3 seconds later. Hi, I'm Nazeris.
And the two of us are the Pathfinders, and we are charting the way through all the nebulous information surrounding the development of Star Citizen. Tonight we got a little bit of a different episode, kind of, because we did do a Spectrum Pulse last week, and it was a big one. It was thick.
Yeah.
And is it my? I think is it my background that's making my aspect ratio funny? It makes me look skinnier.
I took out your black bars basically.
Okay.
So that our cameras were a bit similar size.
It looks like you're like this.
Well, I heightened it to remove the black bars on the stream.
Oh, okay. No worries. Anyway,
I made you taller. Aren't you happy?
Taller, and look how thin my face looks.
Yeah.
It's nice round.
Yeah.
It looks like I've lost weight, which I really need to do. Yeah. So last week we had a big Spectrum Pulse, so we took that on together, but we didn't do it with scanner anomalies because we also had the roadmap roundup to go. And so if you haven't watched that episode, go ahead and check it out on YouTube. Or wherever you listen to podcasts, because we talked about drones last week, and I mean I think that was a really informative expose on drones. There was a lot more information than I thought there was going to be when we got started researching it. And I Nazeris, I'm going to speak for both of us, but I think we're both pretty excited about the not too distant future and how it relates to drones. So yeah, do go watch that episode if you haven't already.
Yeah.
But normally we would do our Spectrum, our regular content videos with our Spectrum Pulse and our scanner anomalies together. But because we did such a long one on drones last week, we decided to do just scanner anomalies this week. And we both picked scanner anomalies that have a lot of information to them.
Yeah. So it worked out.
Yeah. Yeah, it worked out. So yeah, Nazeris, anything new with you before we get started?
Anything new? Sure, there's new stuff. Yeah, of course there's new stuff. I'm not thinking of anything other than like my schedule's now pretty down pat for streaming. Which is Monday is podcast, Tuesday. I'm removing what it used to be because it used to be Minecraft mod pack dev, but that's not entertaining, so that's just gonna kind of be a whatever night. I'm not sure what that's gonna be. But anyway, Wednesday and Friday are Star Citizen related. I say related because Friday is going to become my Zero to Hero crew based episodes. Actually, you're in that, so you know about that.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun last week.
Yeah,
doing that.
So we're gonna start actually recording those.
I tried to stream with you, but it just wasn't working. So I just played along, and it was entertaining to say the least because things did not go our way.
So that's either gonna start this week or next. I think we're aiming for this week, I believe, to start up. Let's see, and then Saturday used to be my off day, but we're gonna have to change that to be the Space Engineers Day because my Sundays are about to be taken up by some tabletop RPG with some friends. So that is my schedule, and now it's like solid. On top of that, though, I need to find time in my week to actually make videos. So I want to go back to doing the quick update videos for this week in Star Citizen. I want to do what are they called? Inside Star Citizen. I don't know if I'll get to the SCLs, but Inside Star Citizen, the roadmap updates. I'll probably do a quick run through with a lot less detail of the monthly reports So there'll be the version that we do here on the podcast, which is the in-depth, this is actually what all the content is, and then just the run-through as a standalone video. So those are the things I'd like to get on the channel. I guess.
Trying.
Yes. That's. I think about it. I think so. I'm probably forgetting something. I don't know. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, hopefully I have to go to Salt Lake on Wednesday, but hopefully I'll be back in time on Friday that I can join you in SC again, and hopefully our ship just won't despawn as soon as we exit.
I mean, 1, we'll be playing live. 2, we're gonna be playing on our alts, and 3, we'll have nothing, and we all have to. Siege of Orson's going on. I don't know if that's on Friday. I have to look back at the schedule. So it'll be a mess. It'll be all a mess. It'll be a glorious mess. So because you can get some good amount of credits running Siege of Orson.
Yeah, it's supposed to. The payout's supposed to be pretty good, along with really good loot. So I'm hoping I'll be able to try it out here soon and get into it. But yeah, it was just really ironic that we went to go do a mission doing 0 to hero with a whole bunch of people in noob jammies,
Yep.
and next to nothing. And, we have all of us piled into one ship, and we go and we land. And then as soon as we get off said ship, the ship just despawned. It disappeared. And so we're stranded on on what frozen moon we're on? Was it Cleo?
It was Yella?
Yeah, or someplace frozen. And so we're all like freezing to death in our new jammies and trying to put on armor after killing a few bad guys, and just watching the clock tick until we freeze to death, hoping that someone rescues us. And we got rescued by a guy, and he ended up joining our party, and we went and did the reclaimer mission, and that worked well, and we paid him some money, and all was well. It just I was a little bit antsy because of how much my character was shivering. I didn't have anything good on.
Good emergent gameplay. There we go. That's the word I like using. Yeah. Emergent gameplay.
Emergent panic.
Yeah, sure. It's similar. Yeah. I mean, you'll be talking a little more about how it's going to get ever so much worse.
Oh yeah, yeah. Things are gonna get more interesting and more challenging in the future.
Yeah.
On my end, I was on for the very first time. I had my cherry popped. I was on Captain's Table with Paul Shelley, Astropub, last Saturday, and you've been a guest of on Astropub's Captain's Table many times, frequently, and so that was my first time. And Paul had myself and Atira Kell, who's on YouTube, does a bunch of videos, but he does a series I think it's called From like a Soldier's Perspective, where it breaks things down from the view of an active duty soldier. He's a officer in the United States Army. But Paul just had a bunch of questions for us, and we talked about things from a military perspective. We talked about logistics in Star Citizen. It was a ton of fun. I've been a fan and a follower of Astropub and now Astro Historian for a long time, and it was really cool to be on Captain's Table after having been on Lore Citizen last month with him when we did an episode about the UE Navy and the UE Marines. And so it was, if you hadn't had a chance, go watch Captain's Table on Astropub. The first part of the episode is up right now, and I think the Q&A portion will be up in like 2 more days. He usually spaces them out to feed the algorithm. And then while you're there, if you go check up, I think it's on the Astro Historian page is where the Lore Citizen podcast is. And if you go check out the episode about I think it's called The Sword and the Shield. I don't remember. It's where Paul and I talk about the UE Navy and the UE Marines. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. So if you're interested in lore and learning about the UE Navy and Marines, go check that out as well. But yeah, back to our regularly scheduled content. Naz, do you want to lead us off with your scanner anomaly? And if this is your first time listening to the podcast or watching the show, scanner anomalies, fit into the scanner anomalies fit into our theme, along with the spectrum pulse of we try and find things within the community, the Star Citizen community, that are and this is our buzzword, nebulous. So things that people have questions on about, things that are not quite clear, and because we're the Pathfinders, we're charting the way. It's things where you're scanning your area, and you're looking at your radar returns, and everything's coming back fuzzy, and you need more detail. And so that's what we do. Is our spectrum pulse is where we keep our pulse on spectrum, or we send out a pulse. Lots of play on words. That's what we do.
Yep.
And that's for the community. When we do scanner anomalies, it's usually things that that we ourselves are curious about, that things that we want to talk about. And so that's what we've got going today.
All right. So my scanner anomaly. So I tried to think of a way to make this smaller. Nothing came to mind. So we're going to run through the entire history of this asset. We're going to be talking about Archon Station. Now, if you go to the SE Tools wiki, you'll notice that there are two images that come up. Let me see if I can actually do this correctly without doing it badly. Actually wanted to do this the other way, but it's fine. It's fine. We'll do it live. Let's make sure that I'm doing that so I don't screw it up. And I would have screwed it up. There we go. So you get two different images for Archon Station. You get this one, and you get this one. Now, I think we can all agree, Tree included, that these are not the same station. Not that they're a different name station, but that these two assets are two different assets. Right? There's one with the blue background and lasers coming off of it, and this one with the, I guess, dusty cloud look, right? You'd agree that those are two different assets in the game?
Yeah, they are definitely different looking, and they're also located in different places.
Right.
So, unless that thing can get packed up and moved, which I doubt, considering that first image is an Idris on the left-hand side underneath that long boom arm out there. I don't think there's anything in the game that's going to pack that up and move it, or anything in the verse.
So, my entire goal of this kind of spectrum anomaly. I think I just screwed up the name. Anyway. Scanner anomaly. Scanner anomaly. Spectrum pulse scanner anomaly. I can do my own show, I swear. Is to prove, or at least to convince, that Station B, which we're going to call this one Station B. I know I showed it first, but this is Station B. This is Station A. Okay? That Station B is not Archon. Now, to start off, whenever I read Shubin, do not automatically associate with Archon, because it gets really muddy in these monthly reports. And I basically went and copied anytime they mentioned a Shubin or Archon in every single monthly report since 2014.
Would you say that it becomes nebulous?
I would say it becomes very nebulous in the middle.
We totally need a little thing where you spend little credits.
Yep.
And every time one of them says nebulous, somebody can buy a little thing and it makes a noise or something like that, or something pops up on screen.
Yeah. If I could, I need like a nebula to just flow across the screen. Yeah. So let's get into said monthly reports, and then we also had some shots from two different videos with a poignant, convincing evidence at the end of two different trailers. So remember, every time I say Shubin does not mean Archon. Alright. So, in 2014, March 2014, published in April. So, every time I say 1 month, it will be published the next month, because that's how monthly reports work. They come out a month later. So, in March, Aaron Roberts, studio director, we are also looking at the blockouts for the Vandal Cap ship, Vandal Cap ship fleet next month, as well as more work on the full blockout of the Shubin Mining Base. That is the first time we hear in a monthly report of a Shubin Mining Base or a Shubin Station or Archon. These are going to get more specifically named later. We'll talk about that later, a little later on, a few more years in the future at this point. Okay, and then in April, so the next month, in design, Nick Elms, design director. So they all wrote these. They weren't as summarized as they are now. It says the Shubin mining platform is making good progress in the same stage with significant detailing on the monorail and landing pad sections. We've also detailed the refinery rooms, which have some serious machinery. We're filling out void areas with engineering ducts and hidden canneries. Then we move on. Crannies. Yeah, canneries, crannies, same difference. I don't know why I can't read. May 2014. At least I have Tree for that. That Tree's good at telling me I'm wrong. May 2014. Art Paul Jones. Work is also underway on the large Shubin mining platform, making sure it's on tier and white box ready for design to start prototyping missions. June 2014. Art director Paul Jones again. What about cap ships? Modular tier interiors are laid out, and now we need to push more through the concept pipeline to have the key rooms designed to meet Squadron 42's cinematic requirements. This is also the case for Shubin, now that we have a good idea of mission requirements. So, this is the first time that it doesn't say mining platform anymore. He just said Shubin. This is where it starts getting muddy. Also, there's a little bit of modular talk in here. We had a previous episode where you can go check out where we talk about where on earth is modular. Because after around 2015-16, modular talk just kind of dropped off the map and then sprang back up semi-recently last 2 years. And now it's hidden again. So go check out what's up with that in previous podcasts. So we're now into August 2014. It says art concept work has taken place on Shubin interior. Again, no mention of which Shubin or whatever. Amongst all that, we have also hopped back to grayboxing the Shubin exterior for the vertical slice. So we've seen the vertical slice, or if you haven't, I would recommend it. It's a very good video. So this specifically ties what this Shubin is in this specific paragraph to a specific station, because we see which station it is in that vertical slice, which we'll be seeing later on in the anomaly. September 2014, Shubin Mining Facility. So this is that mining facility again, but it's labeled Archon this time. So Shubin Mining Facility Archon has reached the stage of Greybox complete. It's a huge challenge, but the visuals are matching its physical size. No shaders yet, lots of geo, and I mean lots. To give you an idea, there are 26 landing pads. Keep that in mind as well. 26 landing pads located around the facility.
Oh, gosh.
Each of them the player can land on, get out of the ship, and walk around. All of these details will help make Shubin facility feel more like a living and breathing environment. Concept department has shown a little this month. Instead of 100 miles per hour, it's more like 90 miles per hour. Shubin interior wrapping up. I actually don't know what that was in reference to. Though it mentioned Shubin, so I threw it in here. Might have been a thing that was mentioned elsewhere. I might have just copied the wrong sentence. They just said Shubin, so I'm like, yes, that one. I don't know why I didn't check.
26 pads surrounding the
26
facility.
of them, yeah.
Nuts.
Yeah.
Because that's as big as the stations we have now, essentially. Or pretty close. You know, when it comes to, depending on how big those pads are. Because this is 2014.
What do you
I don't know. That's
3.
a lot of landing pads. I imagine a lot of that has to do with like ships coming.
That's way more than what we have now.
Yeah.
Because normal stations have like
the size and scale.
8 to like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Somewhere around 12.
Pads and stations, but yeah, that's just nuts.
Pads and hangars.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Yeah, I'm counting both as the same thing for just absolute count. Because the hangars have, well, some of the hangars have pads.
Yeah,
wow.
It's
there's a lot less on the current ones. A lot less.
Yeah, this is a fully fleshed out station versus the ones we have now. There's an obscene amount of empty space in them.
Yeah.
Whereas this is that big and it's full.
Yeah, as we'll get to further on, like they are chalking this station full of stuff. And I don't think it actually made it into any of the monthly reports, but there are videos where they mention like this is being built not just for Squadron. This asset, Shubin Mining Facility Archon, I'll say the entire name, is being built specifically as a, I wouldn't say, they didn't say landing zone, but I'm going to say landing zone for the Persistent Universe. This is a major location in Odin. So, there's a reason so much work, was it 8 years of work into it? Right? Is that what it comes out to? 5, 6, 7, 8, yeah, 8 years of work. Assuming.
Well, it's 8 years of work, but they've been working on, if you believe what you're saying, they've been working on 2 of these assets for 8 years.
We'll get to some of that.
Yeah. Well, maybe one of them got done and then they moved on to the next one, and that's why you've got 8 years worth of work to build these 2.
How it reads, it's not so much like that because they would have had to come up at least staggered.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
And there's also, like I said, modular building sets. Once you finish the one, you're able to take all that and quickly build a new one with the interior. And also, I forgot where my thought was going.
Sorry,
but it's fine. Nope, I lost it. Anyway, November 2014, environment art. It says this month, we've created the interior tier building set for Shubin Interstellar. So this is the company Shubin Interstellar. So their kind of style of their interior. It's really basic white box geometric split up. I don't know how to read that. It's really basic white box geometric split up into individual building blocks, which can be used to create an almost infinite variety of layouts. Interesting. Why would they need infinite variety if we're talking about one station? Again, Shubin is one of the, if not the biggest company in the entire game. So just keep that in mind. They're going to need to use those a bit more. Design department can...
Oh, I hadn't thought about that at all. That totally makes sense. This is this is the station, but it's modular on the inside because they're going to tailor it depending on where they are, what they're mining, how many people are working there. But they would have, that totally makes sense that they would build this and reuse it and put it all over.
Just like they've done the Idris and the Javelin.
Oh my gosh.
And to some degree the Bengal.
Yeah. Yeah, because these Shubin mining stations are going to be wherever Shubin is mining in the verse. Every time you go to a new system with an asteroid belt, or a wrecked moon or something like that has a bunch of mineable assets, Shubin's going to be there with one of these monstrosities. That's cool.
Yep.
Especially if it's this big and it's like a landing zone.
Yeah, not every station's going to be landing zone size. Obviously, it takes way too long, 8 years or something.
But if it's modular, then they can
combine their modular interior with the modular exteriors that they worked on later on that we have in the game now. Then you start getting a very quick way to throw up stylized stations.
Yeah. And not just little ones. Really
not just little ones. And we'll be getting the building interior stuff later on, so stuff starts to get done a lot. What
size mining laser is that?
What size mining laser? Let's see. We have a 7,
30.
10. Yeah, somewhere around 30. We'll go with 30. We'll go with station size. Like, We're gonna skip the whole vehicle scale, which we're gonna start a station. It's just gonna be mining laser size station.
Retribution class is too small.
Let's see. Design department can now run free and create environments using this building set without needing art support, leaving the art team to get started on the gray box phase. Now here's interesting. Didn't they already say they were working in the gray box? Well, Archon has reached... Hold on. September 2014. Archon has reached the stage of gray box complete. November. Art team can get started on the gray box phase. Now, you could read this, that they're doing something with the building set. That's gray boxing more building sets. You could read it that way. I'm here to present all the information and let you make your decisions, both Tree and the viewer and the listener.
Yep, that's what we do.
But to me,
objective first, subjective later.
That's possibly the second gray box. So this would be what we're going to call Station B, gray boxing Station B. It goes on to say we've also started to get an outstanding understanding of what being inside the facility is like and drive the type of artistic experience you get as you engage in various missions. This specific mention of missions is specifically Squadron, I assume, though they could mean what type of missions they could get done in the Pacific universe as well. But it is being built for very Squadron first approaches. Not only will it be functional, but also mechanically beautiful in its own way. I mean, I can't wait to see the interior. It's basically Archon is supposed to be basically an entire city, so I can't wait. Okay, design same month, November 2014. The modular Shubin-based components are starting to roll from art, and they look great. So just putting everything in here that had to do with the station. December 2014. Environment art. We have been continuing to graybox the Shubin Interstellar interior building set, so I would lend credence to it's the grayboxing of the interior set, not necessarily the second station, or Station B. All the major components have been fleshed out, and now we are really starting to dial into the details. Everything from wall panels to handles, the shape language for Shubin Interstellar has been defined, so the player will be able to distinguish its architectural style from other corporations within the Star Citizen universe. The upshot of this is that the Shubin universe is now taking on its own personality and life. Shubin universe. I don't know why I picked that, like, that stuck in my brain, the Shubin universe. I mean, like I said, it is the one of, or if not the biggest corporation in the game. Could rival well, any other corporation, but it spreads out through the entire empire. And they have a lot of political sway as well, so keep that in mind. As you
yeah, they've been mentioned in, if you follow the lore, they've been mentioned in a lot of the lore posts, especially when it comes to things regarding talking about I think it's like Congress Now or something like that. It's one of the series that they do. They've been mentioned multiple times, and it was not an accident that the Squadron 42 trailer included that quote from, dang, I forgot the name of the actor. He's super famous, but Shubin is a really big company in the UAE with a lot of influence, and I'd hate for thinly veiled threats. And, that's totally par for the course for Shubin.
Yeah, it's scary big. Like it I always think of Shubin like just as a, rough and tough mining company. No. They're a really big, like, no-face corporation that will kill you and spit you out with nobody batting an eye because they can't match, like, they have too much power. They could take a system militarily and just tell the UE, don't bother. Not that they have warships, but they have that much just power.
Tinfoil hat. I think one of the main reasons that we're going to war with the Vanduul, and there's even talk about retaking those human systems and pushing back against the Vanduul, is so we can get more systems for Shubin to mine. Because they're looking at what we have within the Empire, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna run out of stuff to mine. We need to expand, because their Shubin really isn't like a bunch of the other corporations. They're not diversified well. They are,
they also don't need to be. They have enough really power to just say, I need more resources, find me more resources.
Yeah.
So
because they've got agreements with the Xi'an and the Banu to probably mine within their systems, but that's not going to be enough.
Yeah, and remember, the Fair Chance Act was up on the floor not too long ago. A whole nother planet to exploit?
Can't imagine who's behind that.
Oh, there's a lot of stuff. Anyway, moving into 2015 in January. Environment Art Team. The team has been working towards getting the Shubin Interstellar interior building set to Greybox complete. The main architectural elements are finished, so now we are focusing on the smaller details. Our vertical slice level for Squadron 42 is looking really promising. We are still continuing to refine the layout as more assets get transformed from white box to gray box geometry, and as design works on gameplay. That was the first mention of the vertical slice, and we know what's in the vertical slice. We've seen the playthrough. The vertical slice, however, is probably bigger than we saw in the video. Because they're doing a second vertical slice to a feature complete state right now. And they are probably not going to give us a gameplay demo of that one. So the vertical slice they're working on is just to get a good gold standard that they can then take that and make sure that is the standard that they flesh out and finish the rest of the game too. So the first vertical slice, which we actually had a video on, or Star Citizen had a video on, was probably a little bit more than they actually showed us. They probably have a couple more missions, or at least finishing of the mission they were on, which could have...
I'm going to hold out hope that we get to see the next one. Don't burst my bubble, Nazeris.
I think it's too close to it finishing for it to matter. I think holding off on another video to kind of like stir that pot a bit more, because they know we're wanting. The second they start saying something, once we start getting the briefing room videos back up, of a vertical slice will not matter. And they can fit us much smaller bits.
I think the vertical slice is for like a trade show demo. To take the Gamescom or whatever.
Yeah, that could be.
Allow some people to play it, show a video of it as part of the announcement.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So we get
the lead up to release.
So in that kind of a format, we get a video. We definitely get a video. If they're showing it at a Gamescom, we get a video. Probably a CitizenCon, so this year or next. And then we'd have the start of the briefing room, which would probably highlight a lot of elements. Well, almost all the briefing room would probably be something from that vertical slice. As long as it's not, spoilering anything. So, yeah. Moving on to February 2015. The environment team, Ian. This month has been the Shubin Interstellar interior building set hit. This month has seen the Shubin Interstellar interior building set hit Greybox complete. So now the interior building set is done. Or at least Greybox done. Needs texturing and stuff like that. But the geometry's done. Which means all the building components have a good amount of mesh detail and are looking lovely. We've also been building the PBR master shader library for this set, basically textures and shading. Plastics, metals, glass, etc., and applying them to an established beautification corner. This is where we take a corner of the level up to final art so that the art director, Ian, can see a good representation of how the finished set will look. A modular pass has been done on the exterior of Shubin to enable the design team to create our other space station facilities. So they got at least a corner of it, or they started getting a corner of it to gold standard, basically. Final art of the station itself, and the textures are being worked on, and the building set is gray rock complete. So if they were to start splitting off, it'd be somewhere near here. Then we didn't get another mention of it till March, and it simply said Shubin Lighting Pass. Only that 3 words, that's all we got. We got a break again till June 2015. Under art, then art concept, or concept art, because formatting changed a lot over the years. It used to be all written by the directors. Then it stopped being written by the directors. And now we're like art and then art concept. Now we just have it giant sections of art ships, art environments. So a lot's changed with the month reports. Anyway, it says biggies this month have been the Bengal bridge update and the mining bot. Maybe some foreshadowing for a future episode. Additional work continued on the Bearing Ballistic Shotgun, Xi'an transport ship, Vandal Fleet, and further prop concept definition to add the Shubin Mining base and a few pirate bases needed for Squadron 42 storyline. No spoilers. I do plan on making, maybe not next week, whenever we do Scan Anomalies next, we'll be on the mining bot. Because apparently it's gone through several iterations as well. It was drivable, then it wasn't drivable, it was smaller, then it was bigger.
The Sidness.
The Sidness, yeah.
Gotcha,
so okay. I came across a video of it, and it very clearly had a cockpit.
Yeah.
So I've seen not cockpits on other ones.
Yeah, I've seen not cockpit in concept art, but in engine, it's always had a cockpit. But you can see it in the Squadron 42 vertical slice, but it's so far away you can't tell.
And they specifically mentioned in a video that I'll bring out for the bot specifically that it was being built to be driven by players for mining in the persistent universe. So be sure to watch that video. That'll be next week or the week after, whenever we get back to actually writing our own segments. Next, we didn't see it again till August 2015 under art. Some of the tasks we worked on in our concept included Shubin exterior. That's it. That's all we got. So it got really vague in the middle. November 2015, another big gap. The concept team has been working on additional work for the Shubin facility for Squadron 42 storyline areas. Another new name, the Shubin facility. So we now have Shubin, Archon, Mining, and Facility. So, yay, we now have 4 different names for the same place.
It's getting more nebulous.
Then we...
Everybody drink.
Oh, jeez. December 2015, so 1 month later. Gary finished the Xi'an Scout and has really gone to town helping define further interiors for the Shubin Mining facility. Now it's Shubin Mining facility. Instead of Shubin facility or Shubin Mining. Shubin Mining it's fine. Environmental art. The last month in Frankfurt environment team has worked on the Shubin Space Station. Now we're back to Space Station.
In the same monthly report.
Same monthly report.
Yeah.
A high-tech mining facility whose role is to crack asteroids in order to mine the valuable materials that they may contain. Shubin will be featured heavily. Shubin will be featured heavily in the Squadron 42 campaign and will differ from other space stations in its design. Being a very high-tech facility, this station is going to be one of the biggest so far, giving the player the freedom to fly around the huge superstructure and, of course, land and explore the interior on foot. From an artist point of view, Shubin has been a huge challenge, but at the same time, a very rewarding one, giving us the freedom to explore new designs and really try to develop something that we can we think will provide real sense of awe when the player initially experience it in game. And yeah, it will. Oof. So, a high-tech facility, high-tech mining facility. Very interesting. So that is everything we got from 2015. That ended in December, so we but now we progress through to January 2016. There's only 3 reports from 2016. Don't worry, they get less and less as time goes on. January 2016 art concept. This month, the team has converted Shubin Corridor and Main Bridge. Converted. That actually is a good point against me. Converted Shubin Corridor.
It says covered.
Covered? Covered. Shubin covered. Okay, never mind. I rescind that point against me. Converted. It looks like converted.
Don't worry, I got you.
Yeah. So converted, covered the corridor, Shubin Corridor, and Main Bridge. With concept art. So this is concept art again. Again, why are we in concept? Anyway. February 2016. Art. The team has been full steam ahead. Initial concepts and internal concepts and external, all busting out fab looking work, and it's been varied. It's been a very varied lot too. There we go. Can somebody decode that? Can you decode that into an actual sentence? Oh, fabulous looking work, and it's been a varied. I don't. Maybe that's.
So the work is varied.
Yes.
Fabulous and it's varied.
Maybe that's just across the pond type of sentencing. Because it doesn't make sense to my brain. It might be. I'm sorry. Here's a list. I'm sure you'll discern what belongs to what, they said. I only grabbed a snippet of it. Shubin pilot briefing room, Shubin bridge, redacted ship cargo room. Is that the Bengal, I guess? Shubin Station look dev for the gravity room and communal areas. So that's stuff they worked on. It doesn't say what work done for.
I wonder what the research station is, because I don't think it's Asiedo, because Asiedo's a comm array.
Yeah.
Yeah, a really big one.
So research station was one of my
comm arrays are going to be everywhere.
Well, there's the Asiato ones, which is a company, and then there's also the ICC probes.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of different comm array stuff, and then there's the ICC comm arrays.
The Asiedo ones, or those types, the big transmission dishes
are for deep space.
Are going to be the ones that transmit stuff, information across systems, and then it goes through probes or whatever into the jump points to the next system, gets transmitted, and so on. Like that's how information.
There's going to be a whole net of different communication satellites and stations. The Asiato that we saw, the Asiato comm array that we saw, is a specific to I forget what it was, but its purpose was not general communications, it was a specific manned comm array. Most, like the comm arrays we have in the Precision Universe, are not manned, and they are for general communication around the system. The ICC probes that we used to have in game are placed very specifically in places where they want to look for jump points. That was what the ICC probes are for. So Tessa Bannister was specifically there to monitor the probe for finding new jump points, which is probably why we haven't seen her since, because there's no more jump points to find in Stanton, probably. But yeah, there's going to be a whole net and different companies taking up different areas, just like the repair stations where we have R&R now. There's also CTC, which is a Xi'an-owned company, which also does repair and refuel. And we'll see those in any space near Xi'an space. So it'll be just another flavor.
Asiedo Comm Relay, or simply Asiedo. Asiedo Comm Relay is the name of the company, and it's just Asiedo for short. But is responsible for building the comm relay infrastructure around the UEE.
Oh,
Aceto has developed the technology to allow for system-to-system communications.
weird. Okay, so that must have been newer. Was that newer?
That's just the in-game description, but products: interstellar communications equipment, drones, relay towers, relay stations.
Because they a while ago they said that no interstellar communications would be done by remote.
No, I think it's what do you mean by remote? Because I think it means
no like beaming communications in between star systems.
I mean like what'll happen is I think those is a giant transmission dish thing, and so it's pointed. There'll be one at like sort of each jump point or something like that, or strategically in order to, okay, this information comes through this jump point over here, and the comm drones, you transmit the information in shortwave or whatever to the oscillator relays, which then beam it across the system to wherever it needs to go.
Then put it on a truck and get it through.
Yeah, and then it get picked up somewhere else by another drone, another relay, and pushed through another jump point.
That's gonna be fun. Your entire job is just going back and forth through a single jump point.
Yeah.
Because remember, jump points is not just a hand-waving way to load in and out systems. They actually cross a lot of space. Like, you can, it will be feasible for you to actually pilot your ship slow boating from Stanton to Pyro. I don't know if it's coming in 4.0, but it will be eventually possible. Or you could just take the jump point and save, like, months of travel. And that's months of our travel.
Yeah.
In-game, it's
the
years
big
of travel.
Relays are different, and they perform a different function than the comm arrays that we have. The comm arrays are more like local transmission.
Phone lines.
And local comm coverage. Yeah, kind of like that.
Yeah.
Sorry, tangent.
That's fine. Let's see. Where were we? We are in March 2016. Cinematics. We've also started up work on Shubin Station. Shubin Station performance capture scenes that involve Old Man, and Graves, who look awesome. Those scenes will take a while and will involve lots of blending between PCAP and AI locomotion as they traverse big parts of the station on foot. We realize first-person pass on a part of Chapter 3 scene. Yeah, we finalized a first-person pass on a part of Chapter 3 scene and are still working on more of Chapter 3. So it's just something that they mentioned with it. I don't think I have too much more cinematic, well, I do have more cinematic stuff. Most of the cinematic stuff can be ignored because it's not really any substantial things of the station, neither here nor there. Just basically if they have the station in cinematic form. January, so next year. So we didn't get anything from March till the end of the year. So January 2017, next year. Art. On the SQ-42 front, the Shubin base. Hold on. Shubin Mining Facility. Archon. What's the other one? Something else. We had 5 before, and now we have station and base. We now have 6 terms for presumably one station. Because there's
nebulous.
There's no clear there's no clear distinction. Because they use them interchangeably. They come back in, like, different terms are used at different points. And like we saw earlier, 2 different terms are used in the same report, just by 2 different teams. So, moving on. Where do we go? Alright, Shooting Base is having a major push visually at the moment. Since it's a massive part of the story, we're making sure it's the hero it deserves to be. And this was 2017, January 2017. Okay, so that was another break, and then we get to April, so nothing until April, and it's Cinemax team, so neither here nor there. The team's primary focus continued to be performance capture scenes across numerous Squadron 42 chapters. The current priority are, story scenes on board the giant Shubin Archon facility, so the level designers and artists can finalize the Shubin environments. In addition, the team edited a big sequence for the middle of the story and progressed with setting the vista for a major story event during the opening of the game. Well, that's foreboding. So, Shubin Archon facility and Shubin. They mentioned it with two different names in one paragraph. A little consistency would be nice. May. So another break till May. Environmental art. The art team continued to hammer away at Shubin Mining Station. Now we're back to Mining Station. Interior and focused on improving the overall believability of the structure by zeroing in on the functionality of the individual areas. Is it complicated yet? It's confusing? Is it? Anyone? Okay. July. So another break till July. Environmental art. In Squadron 42, the Shubin layout, now it's just back to Shubin, is being wrapped up. So Shubin layout is being wrapped up. Okay, got it. Both design and art happy with the space can start final implementation. There have been specific scrutiny on making the whole facility a believable and functional location with its own transit system, worker routes, refineries, security, and medical facilities. The hangars connected in a logical way. This helps convince the player they are in a working, active environment with its own set of logic and rules. We've also worked on a section of the exterior to a final visual target. This will help solve questions of scale and read and material. This will help solve questions of scale, read, and material definition. I added an and twice. Okay. Remember, this is 2017. That is very important for what I'm about to show you in two more reads. September 2017. Concept art. This month, they've tackled a few more areas of the mining station. Oh, this is getting annoying. I haven't read this all the way through yet, so going back and forth and just reading straight through it is just making me upset. Really,
I'm all out of beer, so we can't keep saying nebulous.
Nebulous.
It's empty. It's all gone.
Oh, jeez. And some of the spacescaping. All right. December. So another gap till September. Or December. Another gap from September to December. Okay. Cinemax team. Work was done on a track view nav spline tech that allows them to precisely puppeteer AI ships. Wow, that was a long time ago. Like going from the interior zone to outside Shubin space seamlessly. Interesting, it didn't say station. Just outside of Shubin space. Was that typo? Who knows? Anyway, before we get too far down. I mean, we've already gone too far down. Let's get this up so that you guys can see this. There we go. This was 2017. This is what they had. This is what we've been talking about, at least as far as we know, up until this point. This is Archon, Shubin Interstellar Mining Facility. Now it's all in one word. And we know that we've got gray box complete. The interior is now mostly done. There's 26 landing pads, and they are working on to final art. They're just about final art for the station. This video came out in 2017 this is the clip from the vertical slice. So, let's get back into the trenches and see what else there is past this point. Because we got another video later on. We'll see snippets of that as we move forward. As I try and find a way where we were. Okay, so 2018. This is going to get complicated. December. So we didn't hear anything till December. A whole year later. Cinematics. Yes, it's a cinematics. There's some environment art later. But cinematics. After completing the CitizenCon Squadron 42 teaser trailer, very important, cinematics took time to verify that each scene was functioning correctly from start to finish. This mainly involved the Shubin Station art packet. Environmental art. The vast Shubin Mining Station. Interesting. They used very similar terms. Not the same term, because one said mining, one didn't say mining. So, still nebulous, but a little closer. They both said Shubin Station. Getting more detail to the supporting structure around it, developing the facilities bridge, as first seen in the CitizenCon 2948 trailer. Continued, which comes in around... Developing this facilities bridge... developing of the facilities bridge continued, which comes in at around 3 times the size of a Bengal.
That's nuts.
Yes, it is. All right, so let's look at the. Let me make sure I have the correct one because it shows up in 2. We want specifically the CitizenCon one, and I don't have. Neither of these are labeled CitizenCon, so I'm gonna have to go back to the thing that I have like 50 different windows open, and it's a headache. That says the year, not CitizenCon. We're looking for 20. There we go. 2948 specifically. 2948. Keynote. We're looking for the trailer. Digital art. There was a trailer. There's a lot of stuff from this. Adventure continues. Short space industries. Where did the trailer go? I want to make sure that I have the correct one because I'm sure I have the same video. It's just not labeled the same. I want to make sure that I pull up the correct correct video itself. I'm doing a horrible job of looking this up. Mostly because they don't have it. The CitizenCon 2948 trailer. Oh, okay, I have it. I had it in a different tab because I knew I'd be doing this. All right, so we're going to switch over to this. We're actually going to play it. This is the trailer they're talking about. And remember, it says we first saw what they're talking about in this video. So we're going to watch this.
If you're listening on podcasts, Google it, pull it up on YouTube. Say the description again one more time, whatever you search for.
CitizenCon Squadron 42 - CitizenCon 2948 trailer. It's also audibly impressive, so.
I saw you apply to the Flight Academy again.
I'm your new wingman, sir.
The coil. Local scum use it for cover to launch attacks. This is their turf, so moving on. Keep your eyes open.
No sudden moves.
Who the hell are you?
We're OMC. And OMC belongs to Sato Khan. Is that your boss? Are we supposed to be scared of him or something? Yeah.
The OMC aren't the only ones listening into comms.
Is it playing?
Yeah.
I'm watching on Twitch. I don't see it.
You don't? What do you see?
We're under attack by Vandal forces. Repeat, we are under attack.
Yeah, watching on Twitch and YouTube.
Gonna take a quick pause on that. Let me see. I think they might be... Yeah, I see it. What do you see?
Oh, now it's there.
Oh, it's just really far behind. We've been having some internet issues, so it's just really far behind.
There have been battles.
We're gonna try something. We're gonna stop the recording. Yeah.
Each and every one of you has proven yourself time and again. We will not lose the system. We will not fall back.
You got a point. Copy that. Tally's on me. Let's say hi.
We will win. Because we have to.
Well, that ended abruptly. Anyway. So, that was the trailer talking about. The as first seen in the CitizenCon 2948 trailer. That was the trailer. So, let me read the paragraph again now that we've seen it. And I'm going to have to call the cable guy again because my internet's going to 0 again. Yay. That's going to be fun. So, the vast Shubin Mining Station gained more detail to the supporting structure around it, developing the facility's bridge, as first seen in CitizenCon 2948, continued, what comes in at around 3 times the size of a Bengal. So, we didn't see what was called Archon, nor did they refer to it as Archon. They referred to it as Shubin Mining Station, as seen in the CitizenCon trailer. This is probably one of the bigger evidence I have of them being 2 different mining stations. Because we've seen Archon much earlier. They could have just said it was Archon. But they said also the first time we've seen this was in that trailer. And that is 2018. The vertical slice came out in 2017. And we saw a station labeled Archon, specifically in the start of the vertical slice. So, all that together is the specific evidence I have of them being 2 different stations. Shubin stations? Yes. Mining stations? Also yes. However, one's Archon and one is not. We have a couple more to go, but that is the big brunt of the evidence right there. In January, and this is the one that kind of goes weird and gets a bit more...
Dang it. Because the vertical slice in 2017 was like a year and a half before that CitizenCon trailer in 2018.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a big difference. Yeah.
But that's... but they've been working on Archon for 3 years. Well, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4 years. Well, no, 3 years, 3 years. It's been 3 years. Anyway, so next we don't hear anything else till the beginning of the next year. So I guess a month later from that one, but till the next year. January 2019. Cinematic. A key sequence was brought to the current Shubin coil pocket, as the placement of asteroids and the clouds had changed due to the evolution of Gaskell tech, so there was a need to adjust framing and lighting. Some scenes were adjusted in the Shubin Foundry. A 7th name. Oh boy. So now we have a Shubin
That could just be an
Foundry.
interior location in the...
Yes, it very well could be, but they don't specify. They haven't specified. They don't specify. I'm just saying they refer to something Shubin with another name attached to it. That's all I'm saying. An undefined thing. Art environment, or environment art. As we're continued on Archon Station, this one time it's named. With its exterior watertight, the team is now tying up loose ends where sections of the exterior may intersect with the interior. While easy to hide things like this, the entire station is being constructed with correct interior and exterior dimensions as the ships are. Transport systems are being placed into Archon Station, with final art for each section currently being worked on. So this paragraph specifically says they are pushing for final art on Archon. They were approaching final art in 2017. It seemed. Then we had the 2018 CitizenCon trailer of that other station. Station B, we're calling it. Is Station A Station B? That's what we're here to find out. Now, here is the biggest evidence against me. I didn't save the image because I forgot it. Okay. Where'd it go? There we are. So this was put right after that paragraph they were talking about Archon. It is labeled Shubin Exterior. Which Shubin? Not a clue. Just says Shubin and Squadron. So we know it's for it is Squadron art, and it is Shubin Exterior. However, if you look in, I believe it's this one, you can very plainly see something that looks awfully like this thing. In my opinion, looking at this a second time, this strut is a bit thick and round to be, I believe it's that one, to be this, because this is a lot thicker here than is there, and in this, it's the same thickness all the way across. So, maybe it's a port, and maybe they use this for more than just this area. I don't know, but we can plainly see it there, and I couldn't find it on any of the concepts for Archon specifically. Not Station B. Alright, so that is the biggest evidence against me, is that that specific structure is seen on Station B. And this paragraph was calling out Archon Station. Moving forward to February 2019, art environment. This is the now current format of the monthly reports. As mentioned last month, Archon Station's exterior is watertight, and now all surfaces are complete with collision meshes added for good measure. The layout does a fantastic job of selling the station's scale when both far away and up close, with the main transit system also integrated, with all shops and secondary systems being finished throughout March. So, it's interesting. One, it says just for good measure they added collision mesh, which they previously said it's going to be in PU anyway. I don't know. But the selling scale from far away and close. Me personally, this is definitely a personal viewpoint. The Archon from 2017 had much easier read on scale than the 2018 Station B. Station B, it looks like it could be a very big ship. It doesn't look that big until you realize the trailer had a Gladius flying trench style through it. But from far away, it doesn't have that good of read. So, in my opinion, the Archon from 2017 had a better read. I don't know if that means anything to the convincing you one way or another. Just saying that's my opinion on it. May are we in? Yes, May 2019. Art environment. Significant effort was put into the traversable areas found around Archon Station. Again, calls out Archon specifically. This, with the team keen to avoid the standard room corridor room approach, and fully open out the station to highlight its sheer scale once the areas are further developed. A dynamic pass will take place to give each corner life and movement using the lessons learned from the investigation earlier in the year. I did not go back and actually check what investigation that was or if they said anything about it. Moving through to June 2019, Arch Environment again. They don't call out which specifically studio or team. It just says all of CIG Arch Environment. So that's what the new kind of format is. They don't really tell you which specific team, but obviously it's Squadron 42 team somewhere. The team pushed further with Archon Station's traversable sections, which are now essentially content complete. So another thing that's content complete, which, I mean, I'm calling these out specifically because getting Squadron out the door, not specifically for the station thing, but we now have the build set that was completed. We have, we noted that the station was gray box complete, or at least approaching final art, and then essentially final art complete. And then we also had watertight earlier. They are now moving into creating the detail, such as the messes of machinery and pipework that fill the station. As mentioned in a previous update, the team is keen to get away from the room corridor mentality and are instead working in traversable paths around important structural features. This is kind of just like really muddy information because we don't. It says Archon, but it could be either at this point. They past 2018. Station B does, like, there's no mention specifically of Station B. They mostly mention Archon in 2019. If they don't, and I just missed it, now the next two are Archon specific. Alright, July 2019, Art Environment again. Archon Station, Central Hub, received significant attention too, including early explorations of lighting and atmosphere. The aim is to have this social space feel as alive as possible, and to accurately portray the fact thousands of people live here and visit every day. August 2019, Archon Station, again. Interior progressed well throughout August. The social hub is coming to a close, and many of the teams have moved into the engineering sections seen during key parts of the campaign. So, we have lots of Archon work, no mention of any other space station. Not even... So, like, they're very specifically saying Archon Station every single time. Last one for 2019 is October. Archon Station progressed through the months. With attention going to the engineering sections, which they just said they were moving to, and the arms of the station. Players will traverse through several areas, through several different archetypes, with each one needing its own distinct feel. The hero station is in the final development stages, with smaller variants. With smaller variants coming soon. With smaller variants coming soon. I like that one. Smaller variants. Interesting.
That's interesting.
Again, one of the things that stands out to me, if I can remember what my thought was. Oh, yes. It's 2019 now. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. They've been working on Archon for 5 years now. Because I
imagine it needed a lot of updating.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Remember, everything changed 2016.
Yeah. Updating the textures, updating, things to make it look, because the visual look of everything has
it went way higher.
Dramatically.
Yeah.
And so with that, I'm sure there's a lot more work to bring what they had built up to the current standard.
Yeah. Just think of the Constellation 3 and 4, between the 3 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
That is basically the difference between what we see in the the early concepts and what we see in the 2017 and obviously post 2017 video. It was brought up to a much higher standard. And remember, the entire company is Squadron first. So if there's any polish being done, it's going to be happening in Squadron first. So moving on to the last 2 years, October, it's first 1 year later again. Nothing for an entire year again. October 2020. Arch environment. Archon Station, specifically, is the largest location that players visit in the game. So the team who's worked on Asiato. Okay, now we're talking about Asiato, which we know what that is. We've had several videos on it. We've had a whole Squadron debrief on it. Have now moved from the larger Arc to form a larger Archon strike team. So they finished Archon, and they finished Asiato, and they're back on Archon. So it's a big thing. They began by closing off the hangar and are now starting to break down a kit of shared library assets for use throughout the station. This is driven by a new style guide, okay, that provides a clear direction for the interior to keep it consistent with the previously completed exterior. So, since when was it? About February 2019, when they said the exterior is watertight, and they had collision. That's basically, I'm assuming, somewhere near gray box complete. They've been working exclusively for 2 years? No, they've been working almost an entire year on the interior layout, flow, corridors, rooms, areas of the interior. Even though they've been working on that for several years previous. Like we said just a minute ago, they had to update a lot. So, I would love to... I can't wait to see the actual documentary. Because they've been doing a documentary and documenting a lot of the development of Star Citizen Squadron 42 behind the scenes while this work has been going on. I really hope to see all this contrived evidence dealt out in a more concise and chronological and seeing visuals of it instead of just reading about it. That will be nice for the least. Okay, so we move on to 2021 May. Narrative throughout May. The narrative team focused on expanding environmental storytelling paths for the Shubin Interstellar Archon Station, which included additional posters and advertising to help set the desired mood. The hope is to create a dynamic living station that immerses the player wherever they look. Moving ahead to June 2021, Art Environment. Archon received further interior and exterior work, while Chapter 15 and 19 made great progress. August 2021, Art Environment elsewhere. Focus was on Archon Station and Chapter 7, 15, and 19. So basically since... Where was it? It was... Since February 2019. They said nothing but Archon. But January... They said... where was it? No, they said Archon. Never mind. I just didn't highlight it. So, all 2019, they said specifically Archon. 2018, they said Shubin Mining Station was the last thing they said. So, that is everything, and I could go through a ton of pictures. Basically, I'm just going to go with what I have open. Okay, so let's go through the images I have collected. This was actually an earlier part. I don't know if this exact portion got in the vertical slice, but we've seen a version of this in the vertical slice. Looks like the characters are a bit older than the vertical slice happened. But we see Archon Station. I believe this is a much older model as well because it has that roundy bit. And in the earlier concepts, it had a very round front on it. All right, this is the station of the bridge. I believe this is the rear of the bridge that is longer than the bangle. This is Archon Station from the vertical slice. This is, so that right there is this. Right there, it falls off. That's where that is. Now, one thing I'd like to note about this. Do you see landing pads? Tree can't see it. Let me...
So I've looked at it in detail, and I don't know what image you're looking at because I'm watching it on stream and it's delayed.
There you go. I got
what'd you do?
I streamed it into Discord there. Do you see landing pads?
No, I see what looks like maybe hangars at on the right hand side.
Giant hangars, yeah.
But no landing pads. Yeah.
So remember that a gladius is about the size of my mouse.
Yep.
But there, at least from this angle, no landing pads. But remember, Shubin Archon has 26 landing pads. And from this angle, we can see none of them. And I say from this angle because this is specifically, they could be elsewhere. They could be out on these struts somewhere. But this is a large area that we can see none of the 26 of them. So, gives credence to my, this is not Archon Station B, is some other Shubin station.
Yeah.
So this is the undershot in one of the, I think this was the Squadron visual trailer. So we got three giant lasers specifically, which is also reminiscent of what we see in the kind of Archon-esque, the early Archon things. They were 3 lasers. So they had that cross in the back, and then so kind of like a T. All right, so this was in the CitizenCon 2948, I think it was, trailer. So this does look a bit more like that concept art that we looked at. They were talking about Squadron.
Front arm. Yeah.
But still, we can see, like, all through here, that doesn't look like, we don't see any pads in there, nor along here. And we certainly don't see any pads along here. But we see hangars. We've seen hangars.
Mm-hmm.
Hangars are not pads.
Hangar space.
But they said specifically 26 pads. So hangar there, and I assume there's hangar there, 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 and there. With possibly more hangars out the back. So, it's big, but it's not as big as 26 pads big.
If they're there, they are hidden somewhere, and they're definitely not obvious.
And think of all the space that they've said they had to take up. Like, thousands of NPCs live here. Or live in Archon. So, just kind of, like, accept the scale of this. And I think this is just a bit too small. I think this is a lot smaller than Archon. And also, the environment is very different. At least very different from the Archon that we saw in the visual trailer. Or the vertical slice.
Mm-hmm.
So this is him going down the trench. Again, we see no pads on the side. We do see this really cool... I really like the skywalkway.
Yeah.
And we have...
It's a wickedly cool asset. But you don't have that dual arm, or parallel arms with the center bridge thing going on with our Archon Station. It is very different.
Yeah.
The only thing that's the same is the laser arm things underneath.
And the biggest thing, if we go back to this one, is these cyan laser like trails coming off of it, going into the hangar.
Yeah.
It somewhat reminds me of like the stuff happening over at Orison, but these are just lights, not structure. They look like just guiding you into different hangar bays.
Yeah, the Lagrange point stations have those. Well, I think all the stations have those now.
So here are 2 more shots of Archon specifically from 2017. Remember, they were getting mostly complete, at least with the blockout and the gray boxing, by 2017-2018, with pushing towards final art. And so just look at the amount of detail that's in here. Remember, this station was next year. So they were at this point, and then this point, a year later. So it seems like that's a bit far to go if you're showing this at this level of detail to scrap this and go for the other one. So the only theory I can come up with that
one
is
almost looks like it's attached to or built into that asteroid.
Ooh, interesting.
Versus being a free-floating thing like the other one.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I could come up with as a just ruin my own what was it called? Argument. Is that they had Station B by the time the vertical slice was done, 2017, and they just didn't. It wasn't enough complete as far as Archon 2017 was complete, and so they were working on it, but it was maybe just in gray box or something, and so they just did the CitizenCon demo with Archon 2017. But they already had the new Archon to swap out later. They already knew it was going to be a trash asset. That's my only theory on what could possibly happen, why we saw this, and then this a year later. And if anyone's wondering where the landing pads are, there. They are everywhere. And to find that, you'd have to go back to the original concept art bits. They're just everywhere. Because they are just... It's a huge station, and there's a lot of traffic on it. So, that is all of my evidence for Station or Archon and the Archon Imposter, or Archon 2, or the Archon Rework, or Station 2, Mining Facility 2, whatever you want to call it. If anyone's in chat here on live, let me know your thoughts. For those listening, wherever you're listening, watching, let me hear what you guys think, whether that be in the comments or whatnot. Do you think that? I'm sorry for those who listen to this podcast. This was a very visual segment.
You can go back and look at the show notes, and you can see all the citations and the images that he's talking about.
Yep.
And you can see there's a significant difference between the two assets, and the fact that one looked one way and another looked another way a year and a half later. It makes it
at
hard
a
to
quality,
believe
at a quality that's final art.
Yeah, that they scrapped one and made the other, and that's the new one. That they did that in such a short amount of time. They would have had to be working on those at least in parallel or in tandem.
I will definitely admit that Archon 2017 looks like old Star Citizen, and Station B looks like new Star Citizen. I will completely admit that one.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess for the final say, we'll have to wait for Squadron.
Archon 2017 does share a lot of visual. It does share a lot of its visual appearance with the older stations that we had.
Yeah.
Or at least the concept art for a lot of the older stations before we got the ones that we have now.
And another point against me, we haven't seen Archon 2017 since 2018. Or technically since 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So, we haven't seen Archon. And that could be because, hey, we showed it. We're done showing you it now. That could very well be it.
Yeah. We haven't seen a whole lot of anything since then.
I mean, that is also very true.
Yeah.
So, and remember, like, I can't stress this enough. The scale is the one thing that kind of breaks it for me. We saw a Gladius fly along Station B, and it wasn't that far. It was maybe, it looked kind of, well, I guess the bridge was 3 times the bangle. But we've seen it just fly along Archon with a javelin next to it. It's also very, very huge. So I think Archon's bigger though. Anyway, that's what I got.
I'm just gonna have to wait until 2024 to find out.
Yeah, this was mostly I'm convinced, I want you to be convinced. So this is the history of Archon Station and its possible silent death and replacement. It's been replaced with a clone, an imposter, a skin monster, whatever you want to call it. All right, I'm done talking. I now turn it over to Tree. Tree, what do you have for this week?
All right. So my scanner anomaly for this week is called Bad Medicine. CIG, your love is like bad medicine. No, that's not what this is about.
Are you saying we're
so
going to be able to administer bad drugs in the system? Are we going to be able to make diseases?
Gosh, I hope so.
They've already confirmed it. So
yeah,
when they were talking about the Endeavor, they're basically like, "Hey, we want you to build drugs and possibly even diseases." I'll be right back. So you do your thing.
So when I was on Captain's Table with on Astropub with Paul Shelley and Atira Kell, we talked a lot about logistics, and logistics is something that is intrinsic within any organization, within any corporation now, and it's especially a big deal within the military, regardless of which military. But it was something that we brought up because it's a big deal for what Atira and I both do in the military, and so we did talk about that and how that's working right now, how we think it'll work in the future. But it made me think a lot about medical logistics, because we also talked about, and we got off on a tangent for some reason, about the Carrick and Tier 2 medical bays and being able to regenerate within them or respawn. And the Tier 2 medical bays, like on the Carrick, like on the 890 jump, like on the Odyssey and the Banded Merchantman, and in all the Lagrange points, however you want to say it, stations. This is a hill that I'm willing to die on, just like the Hercules and the Liberator not being dropships. I do not think that Tier 2 medical beds will be for regeneration. And I think the reasoning for that has a lot to do with logistics. And so I wanted to talk about medical gameplay, death and regeneration, and medical logistics within Star Citizen. And so this might be a little bit long, but I think it's going to have a lot of interesting information. And I've got a lot of good citations. So if you're listening to this later, go back and look at the show notes. And read through the links that I have in the show notes that I'm going to be picking some pieces out of in order to frame what I'm talking about. And so this all starts way back with the Death of a Spaceman article, which was literally written by Chris Roberts himself back in February of 2013. So
I would like to put
6 months,
like a quotation asterisk on that entire article. It was written by Chris Roberts. Chris Roberts is a director.
Yeah.
He has employed designers. So the content of this may have been, we'll call it, adapted to modern games.
Yes.
Chris is not a designer.
Spaceman has not gone away.
No.
It has evolved.
And
people think that now that we have regeneration, that Death of a Spaceman is no more.
No.
And no. It has just simply evolved into something different, because the original concept was a bit too hardcore.
It's the difference between survival Minecraft and hardcore Minecraft. Where hardcore, you get a single life, which was the original Death of a Spaceman, and now you just have to, well, eventually you will completely die off. But you need to go back and get your stuff now. So, and also, all through the years, I don't know how much you actually quote back to it, but Tony Zervik specifically, mostly recent, last 3 years at least, has said Death of the Spaceman is ironically still alive.
Yeah.
So
it is still very much alive, because much of the concepts within Death of a Spaceman, within the original article, are still alive. They're still part of the gameplay. They're part of the gameplay now. They're part of the design of the game in the future. The only thing that is different is that in between actually your character actually dying, or in between you and your character actually dying, is regeneration. They've inserted regeneration in between the Death of a Spaceman and you being alive. And so I picked a few quotes out of Death of a Spaceman that I thought were pretty poignant, and I'm just going to offer some comments on them. this is not going to be a all-exclusive diatribe on all things medical gameplay. I'm going to cover a lot of it, but just the more specific bits to what we're trying to talk about, the sort of the gist of how medical gameplay and death works in Star Citizen, and why it's important, and why logistics is important to Star Citizen. So Chris says, in Wing Commander or Privateer, which are Chris Roberts games, it's from way back when, huge fans of those, you had to complete the mission to move on. There was no mid-mission saves. This created a sense of anxiety towards the end of the mission if you were badly damaged and your shields were low. But if you managed to limp home successfully, you felt a sense of accomplishment. Without the risk of losing something you've worked hard towards, the sense of achievement is cheap. So in essence, Chris Roberts wants there to be risk, permanence, and loss. We kind of already have that in game right now,
especially if you're a hauler.
If your ship takes damage, if your character has an injury, and you're trying to get through the mission, you can't save in the PU. You can't do anything about that. You just either have to quit the mission and go back and get repaired, or or healed up, or you have to press on and get by the skin of your teeth. And that's an important part of Star Citizen. And it's we're barely scratching the surface of that right now with what we have in game, because there's a lot of parallels between your ship and your character, and repair and healing, and absolute destruction and death. The simple solution is that when your ship is destroyed, this is another quote, you manage to eject and drift in space, where you are picked up and returned to the last planet landing location to claim your new ship, sans any cargo and upgrades you had, unless you had bought additional insurance, and head out into space again. And so this is talking about, the idea isn't, we've dealt with this for so long, where your ship blows up, and you die. Your ship blowing up isn't a slow thing. It's all of a sudden, you're taking damage, and then kaboom. There's no incapacitation, and that's just a limitation of the game right now, and because it's not fleshed out. But the goal has always been where your ship isn't going to randomly just explode once it reaches a low health point, a low level of health. You're going to become disabled, and then you can't go any further. And you can eject and drift in space, but the idea is that your ship will not be destroyed, and you can be rescued. It's the same thing with your character. The idea is for you to become damaged to the point, injured to the point where you become incapacitated, and then you have to wait for rescue, someone to come and get you. And this is why working together with other people is so important, so that you have somebody who can come and rescue you. But we'll get more into that later. But that's why I picked this quote. It's, you're either rescued or recovered and returned to the hospital landing zone of your choice using the beacon system. And we'll get more into the beacon system as well. Next quote. This is a mechanic EVE Online uses, with the extra wrinkle that if another player blows up your escape pod, a stored clone of your character is activated, respawning your character and effectively making him/her immortal. In EVE, death is allowed for in the fiction and is balanced out by the cloning mechanism, which allows for loss of property but not your character's skills, as unlike Star Citizen, your character in EVE has RPG skills that you learn. The death mechanic in EVE is clever and well woven into their fiction, but I'm not interested in making EVE 2.0 with cockpits. So what was originally planned is, if you eject from your ship in space combat, or if somebody, or if you're downed in FPS combat and the other player comes along and executes you, in EVE, you have a clone, and they just make a new clone of you. Well, originally with Death of a Spaceman, if somebody, finishes you, then you would essentially, your belongings would be willed to a new character, and you'd have to, basically roll a new character, create a new character. And this is walked back somewhat, not entirely, but somewhat, with regeneration. and we'll get to regeneration a little bit. But regeneration isn't cloning, because regeneration comes at a cost to your character. And so instead of cloning you and you have a new copy of you, you have you've basically imprinted your saved consciousness onto a new body, but that body has taken damage or is not the same as your old body, because it retains aspects of your old body due to how you died, and whether you were injured prior to dying. And so you're not getting a fresh copy. You're getting um, your consciousness imprinted onto um, a body that has some wear and tear from the get go, because of the way imprinting and regeneration works. But you can also only regenerate so many times before you actually do big die, just like in the original Death of a Spaceman. And so you can still big die once you're unable to regenerate any further. So Death of a Spaceman still exists. There's just sort of a temporary and limited stopgap between you and actual death, permadeath. The next quote, main quote from Death of a Spaceman is, "When you venture out into space proper, you do put your character at risk, but it will be a long-term one, not an immediate one. I see each character you play having the ability to die multiple times. Still a thing with regeneration, that's the point. Multiple times before the character is finally put to rest. Think of this like lives in an old school arcade game. Science in the future is far more advanced than today. Medicine has the ability to bring people back from what would be considered dead in today's world." And so originally with Death of a Spaceman, your character would essentially suffer catastrophic injury, and your body would be recovered and you could be brought back to life. There were systems that would make it so that way the medicine, it was essentially a way of saying that the medicine is so advanced that what we think of as death and a catastrophic, fatal injury wasn't so with Death of a Spaceman. So that is still there. The medical gameplay and the advanced medicine in Star Citizen to enable Death of a Spaceman hasn't gone away. They've just added regeneration on top of that. So you can still have a catastrophic injury and be severely injured, but then as long as you aren't dead, as long as you don't take a fatal blow, medicine, within Star Citizen can save you and prevent you from having to regenerate. Now you may still, and you should be able to get fully healed, I guess, to an extent. But that was the other big part of that quote, is that Chris Roberts really wants there to be risk, and he wants that risk to scale across the universe. The risk that you take on flying around and doing missions in Stanton is not going to be nearly the risk that you take on if you go out to, Tiber looking for wealth and glory to fight against the Vanduul, or you go to Null and you're dealing with pirates and slavers in a system that's 120 AU across. He wants there to be risk, but it to be to have it be be in relation. You assume risk, but that risk is on a scale. And so if you don't want to take too much risk, you don't have to. But if if you want the bigger reward, you have to assume the bigger risk. So yeah, we're not only can you survive more grievous injuries, and you're much better protected from injury in the Star Citizen universe with ships that don't magically explode. They become disabled, where you have body armor and spacesuits that protect you and your internal organs from injury, to the point where you can be shot multiple times, many times, and be around explosions, and you get downed. You don't get killed. And then you're downed and you have hours, for somebody to come and, rescue you. So, but you can, all this means that you have a lot of stopgaps in between you and the big die. But yeah, like I said, Death of a Spaceman hasn't gone away. It's just been expanded and added onto, but the original concept is still there. And so there's a question and answer section at the bottom of this comm link from way back when. And one of the questions was, what qualifies as a death? And Chris Roberts very bluntly answers, not ejecting before your spaceship blows up. So your ship can still blow up if it takes enough damage, or if it's damage in the absolute wrong spot, it can blow up, but it will take a long time to get there. You'll know well ahead of time if it's going to blow up, or if you take a headshot, and not just a headshot with a helmet, that your helmet has been destroyed or you're not wearing one, and you take a headshot to your unprotected dome piece. You can take a headshot in the game right now and it won't kill you. It will just down you. That's a severe traumatic brain injury. Quick tangent. The reason I'm passionate about this, the reason I'm interested in it so much, and the reason why I think that the context with the real world is important, and we'll get to some of that later, is because I'm a career paramedic and flight paramedic on both civilian and military. I was an infantry marine way back when, but I've been in emergency and critical care medicine and transport medicine and remote medicine for like 16 years now. And the amount of parallels between the way Star Citizen does things and the way things are designed in the real world are uncanny. And I think because a lot of people don't know about how these things work in the real world, they sort of dismiss things that are not explicitly said in Star Citizen, even though there's a lot of pretty strong hints into the way things will work. Nazeris, did I lose you on audio? Do I still have you?
I'm here.
Yep. Okay. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out all this crap. We're almost 10 minutes, or somewhere near 10 minutes or more behind.
Oh,
because of all the buffering. Yeah. Got to call him
Mm.
tomorrow. Yippee! Like, it's doing the exact same thing it used to do. It'll fluctuate.
Stupid interwebs.
Oh man, it's not going to 0 as much, but it's going down to 3,000 kilobits.
Oh geez.
Yeah.
But yeah. So death is a very specific thing, and this list that Chris mentions isn't all inclusive, but it's demonstrative of what death is. Not ejecting before your ship blows up, so you're blown to smithereens. Taking a headshot, an unprotected headshot during boarding. Having your ejected pilot or escape pod targeted and destroyed while floating in space. Basically, you have to have catastrophic destruction of your body or your catastrophic destruction of your vital organs in order to actually die. And before you get there, you'll most likely be incapacitated and have a tier 1 injury. We'll get to injuries here in a second. So the next step, leading on from death of a spaceman, because we talked about this briefly, is regeneration. And regeneration was introduced pretty recently with let's see, when did let me find the date. The date for the actual comlink for regeneration was September 21st, 2021. So just not even a year ago. But this came with Healing Tier 0 and Alpha 315 is when they introduced regeneration, the concept and the lore behind it. And I have the link to the Lore Maker's Guide to Regeneration. It is very important. I think it's really important that everybody read it to really understand what regeneration is, because a lot of people ignore the lore. You can't ignore the lore. Lore influences gameplay. And there are pieces of the lore that are already incorporated in the gameplay, and there are pieces of the lore that have yet to be incorporated. But it's all going to be a thing. It's not just backstory fluff. It's how the game will work. And so I'm just going to read a few quotes and put things into context from that Lore Maker's Guide. The first one says, to coincide with this brand new gameplay, the narrative team has been working on some brand new lore. While we always knew that medical science would be advanced enough to bring you back from the brink of death. Bring you back from the brink of death. This is important. It was during the recent development period that it was decided that players would benefit from being able to come back even if their avatar's body was completely lost. So instead of with Death of a Spaceman, where you get the big die if your body's just completely lost, completely insurvivable injuries, you're exploded into a million bits, your brain is splattered all over the back of your helmet, your internal organs become your external organs, all that. and so, but that's still going to be a part of the game. But instead of big die, you roll a new character. Now you're going to regenerate. But if you don't if you're not subjected to something that would cause the big die, as described here, you can be, the advanced medicine in the 30th century of Star Citizen can bring you back from the brink of death. That's what medical gameplay is all about. Well, that and anything below that. So in short, you're going to have to try really hard to, not with the alpha, not with the game as it is right now, where you can fall down some stairs or a ramp and suffer a catastrophic injury, when the game is working as intended. So in short, you're going to have to try hard to receive a catastrophic injury, where you'll actually die, because the overwhelming majority of the times where you die right now in game, and right now in Alpha 317.2, you get injuries, pretty commonly. You get downed and then you get an injury. But that's because they're working towards this. The overwhelming majority of the time, instead of actually dying, you'll receive an injury. And you'll have to really screw up or be really unlucky to have a catastrophic injury, or incident where that actually causes you to die and then regenerate. The next important quote: while a lot of scenarios could have explained away by diligent NPC emergency response teams, finding injured players and bringing them back to civilization, with a game like Star Citizen, there were a lot of cases where even the bravest ambulance pilots wouldn't have been able to retrieve you. So a lot of people are not dead set against this, but they think that it's only going to be players doing medical missions, and it's only going to be players rescuing you. And if a player doesn't come get you, you're up a creek without a paddle. Well, we know that the quantum economy and the quantum system exists. We know that there's quanta, and that quanta do things like act as pirates and security forces and haulers. They also act as miners. So the AI NPCs will be providing act as emergency response teams within Star Citizen. It's going to be a thing. And if you're downed on a planet somewhere and you put up a beacon requesting help, a player may come get you, an NPC may come and get you. Case in point, right now with the NPC reinforcement system, a Cutlass Black lands and drops off troops who run over and attack you. It is not a stretch to imagine a Cutlass Red landing nearby and a couple of medics coming in, hitting you with the med gun, carrying you back to the Cutlass Red, and transporting you back to, Maria Pure of Heart or whatever hospital you so choose. Or, and this is foreshadowing to later on in the conversation, if you're someplace out in the middle of nowhere, transporting you back to a Endeavor Hope class that is in system, providing medical support where there is none, because it is a thing. We'll get to that. So it isn't just players. It's going to be Quanta and Quantum doing this, and retrieving you and getting you back to civilization, getting you back to an actual hospital or a clinic to get the medical care, or a hospital ship. But what they're referring to as well is that there are going to be edge case situations, and CIG is totally referring to these as these aren't going to be the common things, where you pilot your ship into a star, or full tilt into an asteroid at 1,000 meters a second or something like that. Or if somebody straight up ghosts you. There are going to be instances where you do have the big die, but the majority of the time that is not going to be the case in the way the game is intended and designed and should be eventually, not the buggy alpha that we're used to. Next, very important and poignant quote: since we needed regeneration to be fairly commonplace and widespread in 2951 in order to match the gameplay. It says fairly commonplace and widespread. Fairly. It is not everywhere. It is not exceedingly common. The point of the game is still to not die. because regeneration is still meant to be a significant inconvenience. They just want to make it so that it's not an end game scenario where you have to roll a new character. They want you to, there to be a sense of permanence with your relationship with your character, and so they want you to go and get healed. They want you to, not push forward and get yourself killed or do things that are reckless, and avoid consequence. That's the point. Part of the point of this is because if you regenerate and, you can only regenerate so many times, but also, if you have to regenerate and the closest place you can regenerate from is far from where you were, it's a big inconvenience. Your ship, your equipment, everything that was on you is back where you actually died, and you have to go and retrieve it and travel all that way. And the only way to avoid that is to plan for that inconvenience, which is going to be costly. And we'll get to that more when we talk about the medical logistics. So following that, next quote within the Lore Maker's Guide to Regeneration. In 2949, the first successful regeneration of a human occurred using a rapid bioprinting technology created by Bioticor and the imprint information stored on an Ibrahim sphere. Recognizing this breakthrough's potential, Imperator Addison authorized trillions of credits into making the technology as widely available as possible. Not widely available, as widely available as possible, going so far as to make the specifications for the Ibrahim sphere public, so that multiple companies could produce the scanners and bioprinters needed. Today, and this is the biggest part of this, today, while the regeneration process remains costly, even the lowliest space station is equipped with an imprint-capable medical scanner, and billions of lives have been saved. Notice the separation between the sentence, the part of the sentence that says, today, while the regeneration process remains costly, even the lowliest space station is equipped with an imprint-capable medical scanner, and billions of lives have been saved. So instead of people dying the big die, by maintaining an imprint, people are allowed to regenerate and have 9 lives. You're a cat now. Congratulations, everybody's a space cat. We're like the Kilrathi, right? The Kilrathi from Wing Commander.
Meow.
We're all space cats now. Meow. But that separation is really important, and something that a lot of people gloss over when they think that regeneration is just going to be everywhere. You're going to regenerate it, be able to regenerate at every tier 2 bed in the verse. No, regeneration is costly. It is the imprinting part of the equation that is widespread and able to be found at every space station. Imprinting and using an Ibrahim sphere is the equivalent of having a CT scan nowadays. CT scanners or CAT scanners are everywhere. There are CAT scanners in, most urgent cares don't have them, but CAT scanners in every ER. Basically you have to have access to a CAT scanner to be in an emergency room. They're in a lot of outpatient clinics and outpatient facilities. They're in every hospital, regardless of how big or small. Just about every hospital has a CT scanner, unless it's an ultra rural one. And it's because the scanning and creating of your imprint using an Ibrahim sphere is the important part, because all it's doing is updating your imprint. And I'm not going to get into too much detail about what imprinting is and your imprint viability score, but the idea is that the game is going to encourage you to maintain your imprint. The longer you go without imprinting before, and then you say you've gone a long time since your last imprint, and then you big die and you have to regenerate. The worse that is for your imprint viability score and your regenerated person. And so by imprinting more frequently and having higher quality imprints from a higher quality Ibrahim sphere, like on a tier 1 bed versus a tier 2, you essentially have more lives. You are a cat with 12 lives instead of 9. And if you do use one of those lives, you're a cat without a limp instead of having a limp. You're a cat with full stamina like you're 5 instead of you're 13. We're going to keep using this cat analogy, metaphor, whatever you want to call it.
And they haven't actually said what the where or what differentiates who will have a higher tier Ibrahim sphere, right? They said it will be a thing, but they haven't dictated exactly what that's going to function like in game.
No, the only thing. Let's see.
Because I know they said it was different, but they haven't said like, is a station going to have a lesser quality? Is a pirate station going to have a lesser quality specifically?
I think it's going to be, because you're going to be imprinting in medical beds.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be the quality of the tier of the med bed. We don't know if there's going to be different types of med beds, like this one's made by the medical equivalent of Drake or Castec Arms, and this one's the medical equivalent of Origin. But there is, it does say under the Ibrahim sphere part, I'm just going to read through it real quick, the technology inside medical beds and scanners that allows them to create and store imprints. Made out of advanced materials that are alien in origin, the technology behind the spheres was made public to encourage mass production and development. The technology behind the spheres was made public to encourage mass production and development. It is important to note that not all spheres are created equal. Higher quality spheres are better able to preserve imprints and cause less trauma during the regeneration process, allowing for more cycles before viability failure. So there's a lot of really important stuff to take into account here, and that's why it's so important to read these things. It is not just fluff. But the big thing to take away from all this is that regeneration is costly. It's going to cost, whether you're paying for the process of regeneration. If you have to regenerate, it's going to cost you a lot of money in UAC. If you are providing regeneration with your tier 1 bed, I'm going to come right out and say it, with your tier 1 bed, the regeneration is going to be costly in terms of resources. It's going to be much more cost effective and efficient, whether it's you paying for it or you providing it, to heal someone or to be healed, than it is to regenerate. You're going to want to avoid having to regenerate. It's just a last resort stopgap if you cannot be healed. So yeah, it's my comments on this is regeneration is costly in terms of money and resources. So it makes sense that you wouldn't be able to regenerate at every medical bed or in every location. It's just like how we have now. And I have at the bottom of my show notes, I have an example. The tier 1, 2, and 3 beds, it mirrors almost exactly along tier 1, 2, and 3 beds, along with your handheld medical care, what you can do using your character with your med gun and stuff, mirrors almost exactly the roles, what we call in the military, which is US military and NATO, the roles of medical care: role 1, role 2, role 3, and we even have role 4. But as well as trauma center levels in the US, and there's other countries that use them, level 1, level 2, level 3, and we don't talk in my line of work, we don't talk about level 4. It's not really even a thing. Level 4 is what you can do by hand, essentially. In that you the only thing is the military is inverse, whereas the higher number is better, whereas the civilian side, it's the lower number the better. But the relationship is still the same, in that because having that higher level of care and capability is so costly in terms of resources and personnel, they're put in strategic locations in order to be to provide the most benefit. But it just means and this is why people like me exist. This is my whole job. This is my what I do, is I move people who are, I either pick them up from the point of injury or where they are ill, and I take them to the appropriate level of care, or I take them from a level of care that isn't appropriate to the a higher level of care that is. And that's why in Stanton, you have tier 2 beds at all the clinics in the Lagrange point stations because and we're going to get into this in a second. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. You want to have easy access to the level of care that applies to the majority of the injuries and illnesses that you're going to see. That you want that to be readily available. But because the big die and the tier 1 injuries are not going to be common, you don't want to have that everywhere because it's a drain in resources, and there's more evidence to support that as we get into this. But yeah, so that's the highlights of the Lore Maker's Guide to Regeneration. So again, I highly encourage you to read it like 3 times, because it will make more sense the more times you read it. But that's part of my case for why tier 2 beds aren't going to be for regeneration, but they're still invaluable for what we were going to be doing in Star Citizen. Moving on, and this next comm link is from 2018, from when the Apollo was released in like August. But it remains it's still accurate. Nothing's really changed, because it's just talking about medical gameplay, not regeneration. And so I put a screenshot of something that's in there, and I'm just going to read through it, but this is in the show notes. So it says, in the future, planet-side medical locations and medical ships will bring different tiers of healing to the universe. Tier 1, recover from near-death experiences and fatal injuries. This is the equivalent of a level 1 trauma center in civilian medicine, here in the US. Or, it's basically the equivalent of a roll 3/roll 4 in the military, where you have definitive care and definitive treatment. They can, and basically you can stop the dying and completely treat and heal whatever's going on. Tier 2, recover from serious injuries such as multiple limb bleed outs and or ruined limbs. And so, if you've been shot in the arms or something like that, or your arms have taken, explosive damage, your tier 2 bed can fully recover your limbs from these things. So if you have a serious injury to your limbs, this can take care of it. But it's more than that, and we'll get into that here in a second. But it just talks more specifically about ruined limbs. But the other thing is, you're wearing body armor, and you have more armor. If you look at the armor that you're wearing with your vests, you are much better protected around your core, just like we wear now, and around your head with your helmet than you are your limbs. You are much more likely to suffer a limb injury than a central body injury, because the way it's designed is so that you can take multiple hits on your armor and not get injured. Your armor will degrade and let you know, hey, you've been, shot 5 or 6 times, and if you get shot again, it's gonna break through and cause an injury, but it'll still slow it down, that sort of thing. It's the same. It's meant to be similar to ship armor. We don't have it in game, but we know how it's supposed to work, how it's supposed to prevent your ship from taking damage until it fails, but it's supposed to let you know. Oh, and the Twitch is just letting me know. It says, thanks for following Paraland Flyer. And Paraland Flyer is actually an IRL friend of mine and a fellow flight clinician. He's a flight paramedic and flight nurse that works with my wife. And he's actually crashing in our guest room that's on the other side of the wall. So he's listening through the wall right now.
So he knows exactly how far behind we are.
Yes, yeah, he's a fellow Uber nerd.
Nice.
He's he might comment here in a second and be like, hell yeah, I am. But so this next quote is going to extrapolate on what I just talked about with the tier 1, 2, and 3 beds. And so while some injuries won't fully heal until the player has received the correct level of treatment, the more basic medical facilities will still be able to keep non-fatally injured players alive and stop bleeding. However, it is not recommended for any injured player to stay in a semi-injured state for too long, as there will be consequences such as reduced stamina. Staying in a damaged state for a long time will also make you weaker against further damage, so it should always be a priority to heal yourself as soon as possible to prevent further mishaps. While some injuries won't fully heal until the player has received the correct level of treatment, the more basic medical facilities will still be able to keep non-fatally injured players alive and stop bleeding. So, if you are downed, and this is what this is saying, and I'm going to take a hard stance on this. I don't think we need CIG to spell it out any more than that. But if you're downed and you have a tier 1 injury, your chest armor broke and you got shot in the chest, and you have a tier 1 injury, a tier 2, you can get medical stabilization with a med gun, to give you basically give you more blood and to help slow the bleeding down and to treat the pain, and get moved to a tier 2 bed or even a tier 3 bed. And depending on what level of bed it is, even if you have a tier 2 or tier 3 bed, it will be able to stabilize you to an extent. So if you get to a tier 2 bed, say on your Carrack or your Banu Merchantman, your 890 jump, whatever, or you get brought to a space station in remote space because there isn't a landing zone hospital in that system, or isn't one nearby, you can get treated and you won't die, but you'll just have, you'll essentially have like a tier 2 injury, with the negative, some sort of debuff, that we all know from every RPG everyone's ever played. You're going to have a debuff until you get fully healed, but you won't die. You're not going to, the dying process will have stopped. They'll have stopped the bleeding. But once you get treated, you won't die. You're just going to have that debuff until you get the appropriate level of treatment. So you'll have a tier 2 bed, treats your tier 1 injury, essentially downgrades it to a tier 2 injury, but can't downgrade it any further. And then you need to at some point get to a tier 1 bed to remove the debuff. So you can run around and complete the mission. If you had to get evac'd, a ways back to your Apollo with only tier 2 med beds. You could do something like that. Or your tier 3 bed on your Cutlass Black is able to stabilize you so you don't die, but you have a more severe debuff. So maybe you can walk, but you can't run. You can't even jog, and you can't carry stuff or something. Okay, at least you're going to live, and you can make it until you make it back to more definitive level of care. But you're not going to waste the regen, and you're not going to lose all your gear someplace. That's the goal of medical gameplay. And that's the goal, is to incentivize you to, hey, I just got, healed or at least treated, and it only cost me this much, versus having to spend, add a 0 or more in order to get regenerated. And we're going to get more into that. And so the next bit is just, I put in a few screenshots and quotes from the actual medical ships and their Q&As to add to that. So starting first with the Drake Cutlass Red, and this is from the comlink the transmission comlink from when the Cutlass Red was released, with was it with 315? I forget when it was released. Anyway, and this is just a screenshot, but it says meet Drake's emergency response and support ship. Emergency response and support. That's the language is important. Persistent assistance. Adventure support, more than just a top flight emergency responder, like if you're running little 911 calls in Stanton. The Cutlass Red is also highly regarded as a support vessel for hazardous combat, recon, and exploration. Dangerous missions become much less risky endeavors when medical support is a stone's throw away. They are blatantly telling you that if you're going to go and engage in something that is dangerous, to bring medical support with you. Or to have it nearby, so that way you don't die, so that way you don't need to regenerate. It's not, they are highly encouraging you to do this. And even if you just bring a Cutlass Red, that's a completely viable option. It will save you money and it will save you time versus having to regenerate.
It was 3/8 December 2019.
3/8 December. Okay, yeah. So it was before 315, but it was when the Cutlass Red released. And that was back when the Cutlass Red could respawn, which is why a lot of the Cutlass Red comlink is actually incorrect, because it says that you can respawn there, which you can't anymore. but this part is still very accurate. It's also very accurate because you can, per what has been said about the Endeavor Hope class and the Hangar module on the Endeavor Hope class, the Endeavor with the Hope class, is that it can carry multiple or 2 Cutlass Reds. And so if we do get what I think we're going to get, you can just have your Cutlass Red bring you to an NPC Hope Endeavor class that's floating in the middle of this system, that doesn't have a landing zone, because there's going to be NPC organizations that do this sort of thing. Moving on to the Apollo, which is the sort of next step up. And this is from the comlink for the transmission comlink for the Apollo. The innovative modular layout of the Apollo's medical bays permits maximum efficiency and tailored levels of medical support to suit all levels of projected severity, while also supporting a more balanced configuration for patrol and general emergency response. So if you are going to Tiber and you're trying to recover something or attack a Vandal outpost or something like that, it's going to be dangerous. And the Vandal are ruthless. So there's a good chance that you could get severe injuries and that you might have the big die, but you don't want to go all the way back. Okay, so configure your Apollo with like a 1 tier 1 med bed and 2 tier 2 med beds, to support your squad of 6 or 8, that sort of thing. Because it's equipped with drones, it can be nearby and send the drones to come recover you, and that way you don't have the big die. You do get the treatment you need, but you're expecting more severe injuries. Or if you are having a bigger operation in a more settled system, and there are landing zones with hospitals nearby, with tier 1 beds or tier 2, or something like that, you might want to configure your Apollo, instead of being a small highly capable clinic, or an actual like emergency room, you want to configure it more like a upsized ambulance, and you just need to be able to treat more people and move more people back to where the definitive care is. You just want to keep them from dying and fly the 5-10 minutes back to the the landing zone or something like that, so that way they can get the definitive care. But you don't need to. You want to be more efficient about it, instead of carrying what you need for regeneration, because it's not expected that you'll need to regenerate, or if they do have to regenerate for whatever reason, regeneration is nearby anyway. It's only a few minutes away. It's not worth going through the extra effort. In the Apollo brochure, it says new for, and this is just little screen captures that I've got that are in the show notes. And I don't have the brochure linked in the show notes, but you can just Google it and you'll be able to find it. It says new for 2948. Our patented Shepard Medilift extraction drones are changing the face of rescue operations throughout and beyond the UEE. Utilizing a cutting-edge combination of thruster and tractor beam tech, each Medilift pod safely delivers critical patients to the ship when landing isn't an option. So, along with NPCs operating Cutlass Blacks, I would not be surprised if we see NPCs operating the full range of medical ships along with players in order to come and get you. Because the difference between, Cutlass Red, the one of the big things is the Cutlass Red has a medium radar. The Apollo has a large radar. It can see a long ways the larger the radar, the further it can see or recognize your beacon where you're calling for help. And that's the big thing for it. And so you can be in these remote systems, and they're with limited medical support, and you can have support get to you quickly by activating your medical beacon. And along comes an Apollo and comes to get you, and you've got a high level of medical care or even definitive medical care, that isn't going to be far away or is within reach. And this is going to be part of your planning to make sure that that's available, or to coordinate it ahead of time, either with players or with NPCs. Sorry, I have to hydrate. The next little quote from the Apollo brochure is, and this is supporting the first one. from the comlink, the innovative modular layout of the Apollo's medical bays promote maximum efficiency and enable tailored support to suit all levels of projected severity. Patrol and general emergency response configurations are also supported. The big thing is efficiency, and there's more to it later on in here. I think it's in the Q&A for something. You want to tailor the Apollo to what you're going to need. If you're using a tier 1 bed to hear tier 3 injuries, it will consume more resources. It is less efficient. And not only in that you have less beds, but it's also the beds are less efficient for treating those things because it's overkill. And so you want to configure your ship based off of what you're planning to run into, or who you're planning to support. If you're providing support to another organization, you want to make sure that you are configured for what they're anticipating to run into. But if you want to be the most profitable in doing what you're doing, you can just have 2 tier 1 beds, but you're going to end up using more resources, and that's going to cost you more money, and that's going to affect your bottom line. Just like if you go to a level 1 trauma facility, they will, in the US, they will charge you higher rates for things, even if they're simple, compared to a lower level hospital, because they have all these resources and they have to cover the cost of those resources, even though they might not be needed. And so we're going to get into I think that's where this is talked about more. A few questions in the Q&A for the Apollo. And sorry if this scanner anomaly is going long, but this is really important stuff, and this is a good summation of medical gameplay, medical logistics, and what regeneration is actually going to be like in Star Citizen. The first question: will there be any interactive doctor gameplay to healing in med bays and first aid, or will it be automatic based on the tier of healing? The design, and a lot of people seem to think that the med beds are just get the person in the med bed and they're going to be healed, and that's not the case. That's what this is talking about. The design for Doctor Medical gameplay is not fully signed off, but it currently has interactive elements to it. One of the things that we always want to do with Star Citizen is to make player interactions physical rather than just pressing a button and walking away. An example being the current mining loop that requires a level of constant control instead of automatic extraction. So right now, if you go watch the Banu Merchantman video, you will see that the med beds are going to be interactable. You're going to have to keep them stocked with the supplies that they need to perform the treatments that you're going to be doing with the med bays. It isn't just put the person in the med bed, keep it stocked, the med bed does the rest. No, it's going to be as interactive as mining. It's going to be as interactive as refining. When if you read about the refining gameplay loop, you're going to actually have to do stuff with refining. It isn't going to be set it and forget it like setting a refinery job at the refineries that are in game now. It's going to require active participation in order to get the job done.
Yeah, and we can always see a seed of that in just the medical gun where you have all these sliders, and you might want to do a certain amount of things with which drugs you're giving a person because of the blood drug level. You want to give the stuff they need, not just maybe not 100% of everything all the time. Because
you can use the automated part, but if you do so, you're going to vastly increase their blood drug level. And this isn't in game yet, but this is what we have is very simplified. It's going to get iterated on. But yeah, that's part of the whole thing is you want to maintain someone's blood drug level, low. You don't want to overdose them. Yeah. You want to give them what they need, not what they don't. Guess what? That's a real thing in medicine.
And it will probably come down to a point where you have to choose: do I give them this drug that will help them with this thing, or this one that will help them with this thing? Because you have not enough blood drug level overhead, but you have two different problems you need to solve. So you're going to need to balance that out. And that will be one of the active things to do.
And you're not going to need to know real life medicine to do this. You're going to scan the character, the player, whether it's an NPC or player, and it's the game is going to tell you that this is what they what they need, and then you just have to, like with mining, you have to give them what they need in the right amount. But if you give them the wrong thing, it will it won't help, or it could harm depending on what it is. And if you give them too much, you'll overshoot. And this is a concept that is, this is a thing in medicine. It isn't, it's very realistic, but they're making it in a way that the game will give you the information you need. You don't have to be an actual expert in medicine to do it, just like you don't have to know anything about mining in real life to mine in game.
Yeah, it's always good game design when you give the players all the information they need. Not all the information they want, but all the information they need to make the correct or incorrect decisions.
Yeah, and you just have to know how to follow the steps, follow the process, and respond to prompts with the right commands.
Right.
Next question: what happens to the player while they're waiting to be picked up, transported, and healed? Are they just sitting there doing nothing the whole time? Currently, the plan is for the player to be physically immobilized during pickup, transportation, and healing. Already, I don't think that's going to. We've already backed away from that in statements in ISC surrounding healing and why we have the healing beams. I do think we'll get more toward injections, where you have to actually get up next to the person and inject them with stuff. Like hypo spray. But I think it's a tech limitation now. But we'll finish the quote. We will review whether this is too much and if we need to provide some level of interaction. During these downtimes, we'll make sure the player has access to feedback, notifying them of their current state, and an indicator showing them the rough time until the next state. What they have talked about, and this is pulling from bounty hunting, is that if you are captured and put into one of the stasis tubes, that your player will wake up in the facility that you're getting taken to. They've talked about doing something like that, and so I can imagine they could use the same thing. You're downed, you're injured, and you are immobilized until you get brought into the med bed, and then once you get in the med bed and you pick a destination that you want to get transported to, then you wake up at that destination, and the other player, if it is a player doing the mission, just has a copy of your body there, and they just, in order to get the payout, they have to complete the mission, and the payout will scale based off how well they complete the mission. Time, condition of the patient when you get there. So that's an easy way of getting around it, so that way players aren't overly inconvenienced. You're not just laying there on a med bed for 10 minutes while you're in quantum, getting to a landing zone or an Endeavor Hope class. But yeah, that's an easy way around that, and I think that's something like that will occur if you don't get definitive treatment at the site. What tier of beds will capital ship med bays have? Will they still rely on medical ship support? It depends on the ship in question, but a ship with a dedicated medical bay will generally have a higher tier bed to provide full medical support. It depends on the ship in question, but a ship with a dedicated medical bay will generally have a high tier bed to provide full medical support. Not highest tier, high tier. Weasel words.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no reason to think that a Carrack or a Banu Merchantman or an Odyssey or an 890 Jump will have the highest tier medical capability of a tier 1 bed with regeneration, because you have to remember, regeneration is printing an entirely new human with regeneration serum, and that regeneration serum is also used to replace organs and stuff like that when you have a severe injury. So it does not make sense at all that a tier 2 bed that cannot treat those high tier injuries could somehow print an entire human.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can use it, you should be able to use it to maintain your imprint. That makes sense, because your imprint is stored somewhere else where you would regenerate. All you're doing is updating it from a remote location. Because when you update your imprint crosses time and space, immaterial. It's this weird. The way they explained it doesn't make sense to me, but weird sci-fi stuff. But basically, if you're in your Carrack with your tier 2 bed, out in a system far, far away, and you update your imprint, it will just basically update the imprint where you have it stored, back at that tier 1, that main hospital in the landing zone, or an Endeavor somewhere nearby, or something like that. It's updating your save point, but your save point is stored somewhere else until you move your imprint, or make until you move your imprint, or make a new imprint somewhere else that's capable. That imprint will stay. You're just updating it somewhere else. But that tier 2 bed might not make a high quality imprint, so it might just be a stopgap until you get back from your trip. So yeah, but I also don't think, and this is a little bit more of a stretch, but I don't think an Idris or a Javelin will have tier 1 beds. I think they'll have tier 2 beds, and maybe even some tier 3 beds, because of the way medical logistics works. Because they will want to be able to maintain your imprint, and the majority of injuries will not be the big die, and they don't want to waste cargo storage space on regen serum, because they don't think they'd much rather have you regenerate back at some military hospital somewhere.
Yeah, and the logistics of each of those ships. Well, the Idris is sort of a carrier like, but it's a frigate. It's not very big. And then the Javelin only has one fighter, but most 99% of the crew is going to be inside the ship. So if one person gets injured, there's going to be a lot of people that's injured. So you can't fit a hospital for every person on board on the ship.
Yeah,
but Bengal has people. Might. The Bengal has wings of people going out on dangerous missions. So that's 5 people per wing or so. I don't know the technicalities of those numbers. But if they get into a really bad time on a mission, they can come back and they can be rushed to the in-ship hospital. I think the Bengal would have a tier 1 bed.
Or it might have it would make sense for it to have a tier 1 bed, just to like one tier 1 bed. But the thing is, you don't want lots of tier 1 beds, because if you do have a bunch of injuries and you're using tier 1 beds to heal those tier 2 injuries, you're using up resources, because it's inefficient to treat lower injuries with a higher tier bed. And when you have limited resources on your ship, because you're not just carrying your medical supplies, but you're carrying everything else you need for that ship, for that journey. You don't want to carry stuff that you don't need.
Right.
And it makes more sense to stabilize someone and then treat them definitively when you get back to base, or to arrange for evac, Apollo medevac. That's what it's for. Or to evac back to a Hope class Endeavor, or maybe there's even a military hospital ship that isn't the Hope class. We don't know, but that's the way it works in real life, because it's more efficient, because it makes sense. It doesn't make sense to have a regen bed on your Javelin, when the overwhelming majority of the time you're not going to have people big die, because you can stabilize injuries with tier 2 medical beds.
That'd be a really
and
cool
keep people alive.
That'd be a really cool concept, having a Bengal dedicated to being a hospital, like the U.S. has. I forget what is it, the Hope? It might be the Hope. That basically converted warship that is just a hospital.
Yeah. It could, the military might use Hope class Endeavors. They might use something else. Don't know.
Hydrating is important. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So let's see. Next question from the Apollo Q&A. Will there be a cooldown on respawns for an individual player, or will it be limited by the resources carried on the Apollo? This is important.
Mm-hmm.
There will likely be a cooldown period to promote the concept of death having serious consequences. And this is, I think, and this is a theory, I think this is why there are recovery beds in the Carrack, because after you have a procedure, after you regenerate, you're going to have, essentially have a debuff, from that procedure, for a limited period of time. And if you want that debuff to go away quicker, you can lie down on the recovery bed.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. They also show things like that in the Endeavor concept art. As well as in the Banu Merchantman that we've seen has recovery beds. And so it isn't, recovery isn't just going to be for a generation. It's going to be when you have a significant procedure. It's just going to be scaled based off of how severe your injury is, and the amount of treatment needed to heal it. But yeah, so there will likely be a cooldown period to promote the concept of death having serious consequences, but it will also be limited by the medical resources carried on the Apollo. While you could respawn multiple times on the same Apollo in the same game session, the overall respawn amount will be limited by the resources that ship has available. Each spawn or recovery will use an amount of equipment consumables required for medical gameplay. So, that's the other limitation. If you bring tier 1 beds and you're treating lower tier injuries, you're going to burn through the resources you have on board more quickly. You won't be able to stay out as long, and it will mean that you can't treat as many people, and so it's just less efficient. It's not cost effective. It's just like with hauling. You want to take the right route. You want to tune your engines appropriately. Those sorts of things. You want to be, with medicine, you want to be as efficient as possible in order to treat the most amount of people as possible. That's what triage is for. Apollo triage.
Yeah. I think a slightly better analogy for current in-game mechanics is the subcomponents and modules and devices for mining.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
So,
no, that's a really good analogy.
Yeah.
Hauling
hasn't had its re-up for it.
Yeah. What's the advantage of the Apollo in comparison to a medical bay you can find on ships like the Carrack? The Apollo's medical bay can hold more people than a non-medical focused ship outside of some of the capital ships mentioned above, and its modularity allows it to heal in ways the vast majority of ships can't. So your modularity allows you to get tier 1 beds, so you're going to be able to heal. If you have it configured that way, you can heal tier 1 injuries, unlike the Carrack. But again, expecting a tier 2 bed that can't heal tier 1 injuries to somehow print an entire human is highly illogical. That does not make any sense whatsoever. And there's nothing, absolutely nothing in the lore that suggests that. And even when they, actually, I'll get down to that here. Well, I'll just say it now. Even when they were the rest stop station clinics were on the roadmap, when they first came up on the roadmap, the release view, they were up there along with hospitals. I forget which hospital was first, but the hospitals said regeneration or respawn or regeneration, and the clinics did not. They changed it later, and they never confirmed, but I guarantee you they changed it later because the game, the state of the game as it is right now, is too punishing for you having to go back to a landing zone every time you die. It's just too difficult. But you do have to update where your respawn point is, and that's in order to mitigate the fact that the game still has bugs. You still die from stupid shit, but at least if you take the time, you can go to the clinic and set your respawn at someplace closer to where you're operating than the full-on landing zone. But they never said anything about changing respawn to include tier 2 beds, and that would be in stark contrast to everything that they have said thus prior. So, will tier 1 medical bays support everything the lower tiers do? Superior tiers will include all the functionality of lesser tiers. An interesting decision for the player will come in how they configure their bays. Having higher tier beds limits the number of people you can heal, and using them to provide lower tier healing could be a waste of time, space, and resources. We already talked about this. Our medical consumables, hoses, sterilized needles, drugs, tools, blood, plasma, etc., stored in the med bay, or do they take up space in the cargo hold? Medical consumables must be stored in the cargo hold, but the plan is to balance it so that even on an intensive medical mission, you will still have room for regular cargo if you wish. On the flip side, you may want to run with minimal medical supplies to just offer a couple of healing sessions and instead attempt cargo missions to generate additional income that way. But yeah, that just says that the SCU on an Apollo will go a long ways. You'll be able to heal a lot of people, but that stuff isn't going to be cheap. Your regenerate. They told us earlier that the regeneration is costly. Regeneration serum itself is costly, and that's what's used to not only print an entire new human, but if you get a tier 1 injury and you need a new spleen or a new heart, that it's going to come out of it's made the same way. And so if you can avoid wasting that costly stuff, all the better. It means that your profit margins for those medical missions are going to be better. And so now we're moving on to the Misk Endeavor. And so the Misk Endeavor is a giant modular Misk ship from way back when. Who knows when we'll ever see it? It is John Crew's least favorite ship because it's modular and it's so huge. And because they promised a lot with it. But one of the ways it can be configured is what they called the Hope class, which includes a medical bay pod as well as a landing bay pod. So the medical bay pod is a large set of attached rooms which operate effectively as a standalone hospital, complete with operating theaters, recovery rooms, and more. Operating theaters and recovery rooms. So tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 beds and recovery rooms. So where you go, to lay down in order to remove that debuff from having those procedures. The Endeavor's medical bay is intended to operate alongside the optional landing bay, ferrying patients from battlefields and disasters for treatment and recovery. This is what the Cutlass Red is for, to take you to either a landing zone hospital or to definitive care at a Hope Endeavor class. And it's important to note that they said complete with operating theaters, recovery rooms, and more. If you go into any of the major landing zone hospitals, you can see that there are doors and elevators that tell you, hey, this is where the operating room is. The operating room is still a thing. We just can't open the door. The surgeon is an AI NPC character who we haven't seen yet, but is being worked on. I think that the beds that we respawn in right now in game in the hospital wings are the tier 2 beds. I think that those are tier 2 beds, and that the tier 1 bed is an actual next level, much larger, operating suite where regeneration would take place, where major surgery will take place. That you aren't just going to lie down and click on the thing and it'll magically heal you up. That isn't how it's going to be. Those other areas in the hospitals weren't put there for no reason. And so it's important to consider that because they talk about that in the Endeavor and we actually see it in game. And if you go to a space station clinic, it's just the little tier 2 beds. No regeneration. Not going to be a thing. Sorry. But ferrying, operating alongside the optional landing bay, ferrying patients from battlefields and disasters for treatment and recovery. This is what medical logistics is all about. This is why we're going to see Hope class Endeavors flying around in the verse, operated by players and NPC organizations, in order to bridge the gap between these star systems that are remote and lawless or lightly populated and limited in infrastructure. We have these things in real life. There are very, very profitable companies that provide these services in real life in far-flung corners of the globe for people doing all sorts of things, whether it's exploring, mining and refining, for natural disasters and humanitarian operations, all sorts of different things. People just doing recreation. I imagine that there's going to be a Hope class Endeavor in, I think it's the Ellis system, when that really dangerous race goes on, where people crash and get injured because they're going to want to have significant definitive care that they're not only for the racers but for all the the people nearby. And Ellis is a huge system. It makes sense. That's medical logistics. The landing bay pod slings a single large hangar underneath the spacecraft, the Endeavour, and attaches it directly to other laboratory pods. Intended to support hospital operations, the landing bay has room to support multiple Cutlass Red ambulances and features complete decontamination facilities. Note that while the landing bay was designed to support ambulance operations, it also functions alongside standard science modules and can support the upkeep of any sufficiently small spacecraft. And so this is another engineering. It's an engineering comm link called the Design, Science, and the Endeavor, Design, Science, and the Endeavor. And so I just screen captured a couple of paragraphs from that are important to this conversation. And the first one is the ID beacon. And it says an ID beacon is a signal containing various bits of information that may either be broadcast from a ship offering a particular function or a player or ship requesting a specific service. The location of the ID beacon and its associated information can be selectively superimposed on a ship's navigational map of the local solar system, such that only those signals of interest are visible. A player that had to eject from the smoking remains of their ship might enable their personal ID beacon and designate what they're willing to pay for their rescue. And another player with a ship capable of retrieving an ejected pilot and listening for such signals would see it and have to decide whether or not the payment being offered is worth the effort. And assuming the stranded player was in a potentially dangerous area, the risk. That's what the medium radar and a Cutlass Red, the capital class radar on an Endeavor, the large radar on an Apollo are for, is to detect these ID beacons, as well as transmit their own beacon. Hey, I'm here offering these services. This is where you can find me. Or, you need this service. I detect you. I come get you now, based off how much you're willing to pay. And if a player doesn't, come get you, you can offer, you might be able to receive the beacon of an NPC doing the same thing and pay what they're willing to pay if a player isn't available. The medical module is another screenshot. And again, the link to this is in the show notes, which is where these screenshots are. The medical module outfits an Endeavor with all the equipment necessary to heal any injury or cure any illness that one might encounter while traveling from world to world. That alone guarantees that an enterprising player maintaining a presence in a popular area of space ignored by other Endeavors will see a brisk demand for their services. This is what medical logistics is. If you have a Hope class Endeavor or maybe in an Apollo, you're going to want to get that thing stocked up and appropriately crewed and go find a place where your services are needed, but you don't have a lot of competition. Where you're far enough away from landing zone hospitals and other fixed facilities, but also NPCs and players doing the same thing you're doing, that people will utilize the service that you're providing. Medical modules, however, fulfill an even more fundamental role within the service ecosystem. They act as remote spawn points for both players and some smaller ships. We'll see if you can end up spawning your ship there. Because they did talk about me being able to request a ship get delivered to the hangar, so that way it'll pop up. But we'll see. When a player dies, they have the option of respawning at any landing zone equipped with a hospital for a minimal charge. Landing zone equipped with a hospital, not clinic, hospital. Alternatively, one may inspect the prices being offered by all nearby Endeavors, and especially as well as an Apollo. I'm adding that in. It doesn't say that, but we know that an Apollo can equip a tier 1 bed.
Yeah, this was posted before the Apollo existed.
Yeah, well before. Alternatively, one may inspect the prices being offered by all nearby Endeavors equipped with a medical module that have activated their ID beacons to determine whether a remote spawn in that ship, a concept that will often allow you to get back into the action a lot faster, is warranted. So everybody screeching, and I'm going to say screeching because that's the way it sounds to me when I read it, that the Carrack is an explorer. You're going to be in deep space. You need a tier 2 bed so you can respawn. You need a tier 2 bed or you need your tier 2 bed to be able to regenerate. No, you need a tier 2 bed in order to be able to manage and mitigate the injuries that you would likely see, and you'd be able to definitively treat the majority of what you're going to see while being out and exploring. Even if you get a tier 1 injury, the tier 2 bed can still treat it and stabilize you, and you can still continue to explore. You're just going to have a debuff until you can get to an Endeavor or get to a landing zone or an Apollo with a level 1 bed. The only thing that it won't do is let you regenerate, and that's the consequence of this. If you were just able to regenerate and respawn, in your Carrick in orbit, there wouldn't be much consequence, for you doing something stupid down on the planet you're exploring, um, or out in the nebula or gas giant that you're, flying through in your Pisces. They want the consequence to be there. They want you to weigh the risks and say, okay, I think the risk is worth the squeeze. I'm going to go do this. Because I have, there is an Endeavor, on the other side of the system. Or I've contracted out with a Apollo that can respond and, bring me back or something like that. Or I can rendezvous with them, if I regenerate. That sort of thing. Chris Roberts and CIG want you to plan, and part of that planning is accounting for what we're talking about right now, what is mentioned in the lore, surrounding the Endeavor. Um, if an Endeavor isn't in the system you're exploring, you might not want to undertake that really risky operation because you could big die. Um, if an Endeavor isn't in system, and it's a long ways away back to the system where your imprint is stored, you might not want to assault that, pirate base that's heavily defended, or you might not want to take on those Vandul or something. You're going to have to weigh these risks against the amount of planning that you've done, or plan in advance so that way you can take on these risks, based off of what you're expecting to encounter. So finishing that paragraph, when a player dies, they have the option of respawning at any landing zone equipped with a hospital for a minimal charge. Minimal charge. It's going to be cheaper to respawn in a landing zone, to regenerate at a landing zone. It's going to be cheaper to get treated at a landing zone. But if you elect to get treated by an Apollo or an Endeavor way out in the middle of nowhere where they have brought the hospital to you, it's going to cost you more. This is that player agency, that choice that we talk about. That's part of medical logistics. Alternatively, one may inspect the prices being offered by all nearby Endeavors equipped with a medical module that have activated their ID beacons to determine whether a remote spawn into that ship, a concept that will often allow you to get back into the action a lot faster, is warranted. After a player has respawned into the hospital section of an Endeavor, they are granted access to a waiting room where they're able to order any of several smaller ships that will fit within the medical module's hangar bay. This is what they're talking about, requesting a ship. The Endeavor's owner has to pay a premium for the rapid and remote delivery of such ships, and in turn is able to dictate the amount of profit that they require. Upon arrival of the ship, the respawn player and any of their party members that are also residing within the waiting room may enter the hangar bay, board the new ship, and continue on their way. Most organizations will want at least one Endeavor in their armada and will want to keep it nearby, but at a safe distance when combat looms. Again, medical logistics. If you're undertaking a dangerous operation, plan ahead. Either you use your own Endeavor or your own Apollo, or you use someone else's, or you ensure that those resources are provided by NPC AI, and the Quanta system. But if you don't plan, you're going to be inconvenienced. You're going to have an injury that's going to debuff you, and you're going to have to go a long way back to a hospital or clinic that can treat it, or you're going to if you big die, you're going to be really inconvenienced because you're going to regenerate someplace far away, if you didn't plan appropriately and you're doing something risky out in the middle of nowhere. And so I talked about the military rules of care, medical care, and trauma center levels. I've got those images in the show notes. You can Google those things and see what I'm talking about. The relationship is not by accident. If you think it's a coincidence, you're just being ridiculous. But I also wanted to mention that two very important things are on the progress tracker in relation to all of this. The RSI Apollo literally just went into production in July. It is with the U.S. vehicle content team. They are building the Apollo right now. Now, that production sprint goes all the way out to the end of the roadmap, and so we won't see the Apollo in game until at least probably mid 2023 at the earliest. I think mid 2023 is probably a good bet because I imagine the Apollo arriving shortly after Pyro makes an awful lot of sense in order to bridge the gap with the lack of services available in Pyro, i.e., tier 1, tier 2 beds. And it would make sense to have NPC, quantum AI operating Apollos as well as players in Pyro in order to provide these services and have it be a vibrant part of the economy as much as mining and refining and and hauling, bounty hunting, all that sort of stuff. The other piece that coincides with this is actor status tier 2. Actor status tier 1 is what part of what led to medical gameplay tier 0. So tier 2 is what will allow what will enable medical gameplay tier 1, the next iteration on that alongside the Apollo. And so actor status tier 2 starts in mid-December, goes the end of the progress tracker, so we probably won't see it again until 4.0, 4.1, something like that. But it says actor status tier 2 looks at a variety of new elements such as hygiene, NPC status tracking, multiple bites, as in allowing you to take multiple bites of your food instead of just eating the whole thing at once, DNA integrity. So think regeneration, medical insurance. So having medical insurance in order to cover the cost of treatment for these catastrophic injuries, or in the event that you big die, just like how we have insurance for our ships. It's the same thing. There's no difference. Cybernetic limbs and cloning. And it says cloning. I really think they mean regeneration. But it's coming. These aspects are going to be getting worked on more later on this year, going into next year, and they're going to be evolving. And so we're going to see a whole lot more of them.
I think limb cloning.
It could be limb cloning. It says cybernetic limbs and cloning. So it could be cloning limbs and organs.
So
that makes sense.
Instead of getting a robot or mechanical, even a sleek mechanical, you get a fleshy arm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can get a fleshy arm or a cybernetic one. Yeah, because they've shown concept art for a lot of that stuff, and a lot of those look really cool. And to wrap this up, I thought it'd be interesting because a lot of this conversation revolved around logistics and why logistics affects how this will actually work in game, medical logistics, and why this mirrors much of the way it's done in real life, and why they're designing the game and the ships to do what they do, as well as the hospitals and clinics and handheld medical gameplay. But I thought it'd be interesting to explore some of the places that it would be profitable and profitable and interesting, challenging to provide medical support. Because if you're in Stanton, there's a lot of medical support in Stanton. You'll be, you can fly around in your Cutlass Red and get some jobs, but not much need for tier 2 and tier 1 beds in an Apollo or anything like that. It's a small system. There's lots of infrastructure here. It's like being in the United States, in a major metropolitan area. There's multiple, plenty hospitals and clinics, within range. So I picked a few systems based off the lore surrounding those systems, based off how big they are, and based off what other systems they're connected to, that would be good for if you want to provide medical support. You and your org want to operate an Endeavor or an Apollo, something like that. You want to do this sort of stuff. Kind of like there's a company called Remote Medical International. I took their remote medicine for advanced providers course, And this is what they do. They provide medical support based off, all over the world, in ultra remote third world locations. Um, and they basically assess what you're going to be doing and where you're going to be doing it, and tell you, hey, we will provide this level of medical support based off of the risk, that you're going to be incurring, and it's going to cost you this much. And there are other countries that sell insurance for this specific thing, and they're, you can get insurance, and then they will coordinate your care in order for you to get, rescued and treated and brought back to a actual hospital in an actual country with good medical care. This is a huge industry, makes a lot of money, and they do it for all sorts of things. So the first example, and this is sort of a light one, is the TAMSA system. And TAMSA is the largest system in the game, um, at 303 AU. It is over 60 times as big as Stanton. Um, and so basically anywhere in TAMSA, which is, uninhabited, um, you are going to be far from a hospital. But the only thing is TAMSA is where that black hole is. Um, and so the only people in TAMSA are a bunch of explorers and people charting, doing scans, looking at the black hole, looking at the planets that are sucking it in. So there isn't a ton of risk for, significant injuries or anything like that, but things could happen, and there's no medical support out there. So it might be worthwhile to bring your, Endeavor or something like that and station it out there to provide support to the explorers or the people supporting the explorers on these long haul treks to get to, where they're doing all their scanning and sciencey stuff. Um, because you're the nearest hospital is in Caselli, which is the landing zone on the Lorona, in the neighboring system of Banshee. So you're a long ways away from any medical support, even though the risk of injury or maybe it's illness, maybe you run into a probability volume of you docked with this NPC ship and you caught the flu and you need to get evac back. But just distance wise, that's a good place, potentially a good place to be. The next one is the Helios system. And so the Helios system has a landing zone called Mariana on the planet of Tangaroa. And Tangaroa is like an ocean planet, but it has massive volcanic and tectonic activity. So they have these big, huge waves. And then there's a few actual permanent continents at the poles, which is where Mariana is. And so that likely has a hospital and infrastructure. And so you could provide your medical support from there as your base of operations. But it's important because Helios as a system is 237 AU across. So even though there's a landing zone there, the system is massive. And so you're still, throughout most of the system, you're a long ways away from a landing zone and an actual hospital. And along with the system being massive, you have jump points into two lawless and very dangerous systems, Tyrannus and Tyrol, where there would be ample opportunity for you to provide more medical support. So maybe you go and get your supplies from the hospital at the landing zone, on in Mariana, on Tangaroa, and then you go out and you go across the system and you're providing support in system, or you go to Tyrannus and provide support and do rescues there, or Tyrol and do the same thing. So that could be a good place to base your medical logistics, medical support organization. The next one is Ellis. So Ellis is also huge, not as big as the other two, but it's 101 AU across. But it has multiple habitable planets with at least one landing zone, maybe more. But because, again, it's a vast system, you're a long ways from medical support if you need it, out in the outer reaches of the system. And there's also like 12 or 13 planets. And some of those planets are really dangerous for mining or for collecting gases. So there's a lot of industry. Ellis is where the racing, that there's a big race that goes on there. But the majority of the gross domestic product for Ellis comes from mining and producing raw raw resources, and though doing so in Ellis is actually a dangerous proposition. So those people need medical support, whether you're providing them treatment on the spot or bringing them back to one of the landing zones in Ellis on one of the habitable planets. There's a good deal of need there. It also has a jump point to Nexus, which, even though Nexus has been brought into the UEE, the Nexus system still suffers from significant lawlessness, despite efforts to restore law and order. And so, if you were based in Ellis, you could, and there's no work, well, you just make a jump and you go over to the Nexus system, and you're guaranteed to have some work there. There's always advocacy and UEE military operations to fight the pirates that are in Nexus. And then you also have a jump point to Tyrannus, which we already talked about, which is an extremely dangerous system. It's lawless and has asteroid belts and debris fields that are super dense. And so there's going to be a lot of people needing rescue. The last one, and this one is my favorite, and it's probably, and I'm going to give away my trade secret, but this is probably where I will be operating out of. This is the Oberon system. And the Oberon system itself is only 10 AU. But it lacks a substantial human settlement because the only habitable planet is ice cold and barren. And so there's some human colonies underneath the surface, but they're really, really limited. And so those people on and that planet is called Uriel. And so those people on Uriel, a habitable planet in its own, don't have any, would have hardly any medical support. And it's certainly not high tier, probably not high tier medical support. And it's a dangerous planet because it's so freezing and inhospitable with the storms on the planet. But more importantly, Oberon has jump points to 3 Vanduul held previously human occupied systems: Virgil, Tiber, and Caliban. And so there are humans who go into these systems and fight the Vanduul, try to go on salvage missions to these previously human occupied systems with human occupied planets. There's a lot of these are super risky, and you also have Vanduul raids coming into Oberon. And so there's going to be a lot of demand for medical support because of not only how dangerous Oberon and Uriel is, but how dangerous the neighboring systems are that are only a few AU away when it comes to getting to those jump points. It's also has a jump point to Null, and Null is 120 AU across, and it is like basically the largest pirate system in the game. And it's where it's home to slavers and smugglers and just basically the worst of the worst. When people think Pyro is bad, well, Null is Pyro's big brother. And there's not going to be any medical support in there. And it's a huge system. So you're going to have a ton of demand in very close proximity to Oberon, as well as in Oberon itself. And that's it for medical gameplay, death and regeneration, and medical logistics. And I really have to pee.
All right, so it's been a couple of long ones, and we're having plenty of issues. As soon as he gets back, we're gonna throw it into our end screen because I have to sit here until the end screen shows up on the Twitch, and that's gonna take 10 minutes or so. There. Start a timer to see how long it actually is. So yeah, it's been a pretty good 2 things. We do have next week on Monday. We're gonna have at least the roadmap roundup, which should confirm all of the deliverables for 3.17.2, which are currently on the roadmap. And I don't know if we'll get it this time. We might get it this time or next time. The next quarter on the progress chart. I doubt we'll get it this time just because it seems a bit close. But possibly in the next one. Or they might just wait till the next quarter update where we get the new downstream team. So in 2-3-ish months. Well, 2 months now. Yeah, 2 months now. Yeah, 2 months in a little bit. So that's probably just going to get the confirmations. Welcome back.
I was listening. The Q2 2023, we won't get that update. We won't start getting the downstream teams for that. We shouldn't get that until September.
But what was I looking at?
Because we started getting Q1 in June. I think it was towards the end of June.
I'm thinking of the tiles for Q4 on the roadmap, on the release view.
Are you talking about the release view?
Yeah.
Okay. See, I hardly even notice the release view anymore.
I know.
All I care about is the progress tracker.
I know.
But
I'm pretty sure within the next couple roadmap, we should get something over there.
Yeah, well, this one will definitely confirm everything because it's released to live. So everything that's in the 317 branch that isn't blue will become blue. And I don't think we're going to see anything added for 318 until it gets into Evo. And I think once we start getting Evo patches is when we will see things that are getting added into 318 that aren't already in there. Because right now 318 is super bare. And it's a pretty safe assumption that there's going to be more in 318 than what's in there right now. But we won't start seeing that until it gets to Evo, and I'm sure 318 is in QA right now, internal QA. Hopefully it goes to Evo soon. I imagine it will be soon.
I imagine before the end of August, yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes to Evo very quickly. But yeah. But yeah, thank you for wrapping that up. My spiel was and you got a raid.
I did, but we're 10 minutes behind, so we're responding to it's not really. Thank you so much for the raid. What's the name?
Cleopatra's
Venom. Cleopatra's Venom. Sure,
10
yeah.
viewers.
10 viewers. I'm so sorry. That our stream is so bad. I will try and get it fixed tomorrow. But they should be able to get chats faster than the video will come around. So
yeah. God, you guys should have shown up earlier. We had all this good stuff to talk about.
All right. Let's flip it over to the end screen.
That was 3 hours, and all we did was 2 scanner anomalies.
Yeah. So thank you.
That is long form content.
Is it? And I still have to. Yeah. And my encoder is also yelling at me, so I really gotta end it. Thank you everyone for coming. We had not only a raid from Cleopatra's Venom with 10 viewers, we also had Jack Axton follow, and I believe we had and Paraland Flyer also follow. So thank you everyone for chatting. Who else do we have chatting? We got Jack chatting, Cleopatra chatting, and then over on YouTube we also had Prometheus and Parker. Thank you everyone for coming and watching.
Oh, I forgot to watch on YouTube too.
That's okay. That's okay. What was I gonna say? Thank you also for viewers who don't chat. I don't say that nearly enough. Like people who just kind of sit and are here. Thank you for being here. But thank you everyone. You got any comments there, Tree?
No, it was a good stream, good podcast. Thanks everyone for watching and listening. If you're watching and listening later, thank you for following us. And if you listen on the podcasts or if you watch on the YouTubes, if you have any questions or suggestions, any feedback, if there's stuff that you think we should have included that we missed that's important, please leave a comment in the comments or hop into Nazeris' Discord and hit us up live. We always look forward to responding to your comments. And then if you have anything to add, we do update these. So like in another episode we'll be, hey, so and so mentioned this and totally forgot about this, or I totally missed this, and this is really important. We think it's important for you to know. So yeah, please do. We look forward to any interaction that we get from the community.
Yep, very much so. All right, as again, thank you everyone for coming. Have a good rest of your whatever time of day it is, and as always, be kind.